Good afternoon, everyone. It is time to call the March 23rd Board of Commissioners work session into order. Elizabeth, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Harker?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gillikin?
Here.
Commissioner Spiegler? Here. Commissioner Matthews?
Here.
Commissioner Cooper?
Here.
Commissioner LaPiccolo?
Here.
Okay. We all have an agenda set in front of us. Unless there's any questions, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
Got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to our first item. This is a Uri Park proposal, is a design and concept. We have Miss Mary Phillip and Craig Sousa here, and Miss Phillips is going to be doing the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and I want to thank you all so much for adding us to the agenda today. I know you have a lot of important things to discuss, so I'm going to be brief. First, I want to tell you my name is Mary Phillips, and I am chair of this newly established nonprofit here in Beaufort called Beaufort Community Foundation. Our mission is to enhance the waterfront, docks, parks, and green spaces. So with that, we decided to identify Uri Park as our inaugural project. It really is the front porch to Town Hall. It's really right outside your front door. So it was kind of a great way to start our initiative here in Beaufort is to choose Uri Park. We also want to tell you that we got approved, our board has approved a budget of up to $50,000 to invest into Uri Park for the town. So it's our gift to the park system of Beaufort. So you all received the agenda packet, I believe, right? So in lieu of me going through all of these details, this is what I presented to the Parks and the Parks Rec Board, who voted unanimously to approve our project. So I know you've had a chance to read it and look through it, so I'm not going to go through that and spend your time that way. But what I would like to do is highlight just a few things before I open it up for questions. First thing is, by renovating Uri Park, I feel like we are really honoring Mr. Uri and his entire family for his generous, lasting gift to the town. He did that back in 2009. He donated this land. We also have a video that we have had produced. We're still doing some final edits of this video. It's an interview of Mr. Uri, and he's in his home speaking about why he donated this land. And also, it shows beautiful scenery of him walking along the waterfront. And it also talks about the town of Beaufort and a little history of the town. And it's going to be put on a QR code once we finally finalize it, and it'll be a great way for people to be able to listen to it and watch it while they're standing there at the park, while they're right there on location. Mr. Uri wanted people, in the video it says this, which is so sweet, he wants people to slow down, sit, and communicate with each other and enjoy nature. So we wanted to take this park and really design it so that's what people would do, a place to sit and talk and communicate with each other and just slow down. I think we could all take heed to that. So another thing that I thought was really a great, and you see the drawing up there, another way that I thought we could kind of incorporate a children's activity to this park, we'd like to add this activity for children to find images on pavers. Have a few of the pavers kind of interspersed in there that might have a fish on it, or a seashell, or a dolphin. Kind of like a scavenger hunt for children, or adults too, right? So that would be a great way to incorporate some physical activity and active engagement at the site. So those are just a few highlights. It's all listed under improvement results on your packet. There's several things, but I just wanted to highlight those first before we get started. So if there's any questions that you have for me, I'd be happy to try to answer this.
Okay. Who would like to ask the first question?
Well, I like to.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the foundation looking to improve that part. I just have a couple of things.
Sure.
I like I think we were sent in terms of the benches. I like the benches. I do have a problem about where the picnic tables are.
You do, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I was wondering if we could move them further in so that I know if I'm there eating, I don't want people walking by.
Right. Exactly. They are currently, they're located on concrete slabs, which is where they are right now. And absolutely, since they're separate pads, we definitely could have those put in a different location. One is ADA compliant, where a wheelchair person can use that table. And I understand from Matt, I had a meeting with Matt, you have to have a solid surface that gets to that picnic table. And if we push them back like towards the trees, say towards Graydon Paul, we would have to incorporate a solid surface for that person to be able to get there. So I understand a lot of these things will probably change when we go to community input. That's one of the things that I could see that might be something to look at.
And in the promenade there, the brick inlay, you said they were gonna have some type of activity where the kids can interact with?
Yeah, you have bricks that sometimes have, in honor of, like words that people can have engraved in a brick. Instead of words, which we don't want, we thought it'd be fun to make a fish on one of them, or a sailboat on another one, seashell. Just different images that you might see around Beaufort, and then kind of have those randomly inlaid into that promenade, and that it'd be a fun activity for kids to try to find. Like a scavenger hunt.
Great. And I'm not trying not to tell you how to spend your money, but I know my grandkids, when I go to the park, they love climbing on stuff. Have you guys thought about something where just a little couple of things where kids can climb on? Because
Yes, sir.
kids get very active when they got a lot of free space.
Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct on that, and I do appreciate that suggestion. However, I understand this space wants to be used for pirate invasion. So we've kind of come up with a design that would not impose on that and give the pirate invasion the space that they have always used.
Even further over into the corner?
They used every inch of that space, I believe. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be a great thing to be able to incorporate. But I think we just decided to keep it simple, so that way it could be used for multiple events and not have a playground taking up some of that valuable space.
Well, once again, I appreciate what you guys is willing to do, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dexter?
A comment and just one question. Comment is thank you to the foundation.
Sure.
Appreciate the work that you're doing in Beaufort. This is fantastic. Just one question. In the packet, it had the recommendation on the name change.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been a formal letter from the Uri family concerning that?
So that discussion started when we were thinking about adding a garden for his wife, in memory of his wife, and then we decided that wouldn't be the right thing to do because we wanted it open for the pirate invasion. And then with discussion, I know Craig has a very good relationship with the Uri family since he's neighbors, and I think through that discussion, instead of changing the name to even Lynn and Faye Uri to incorporate her in this, they decided that, and they did like the idea of changing it to the Uri Family Park. But we will definitely get something in writing. If this does move forward, we kind of wanted to take our steps first. But thank you for that question.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'll second. It is so great to have the foundation and the focus on parks in our town. We are very fortunate, and we've got so much potential in our town. So thank
Yes,
you.
we do. You're welcome.
So I have a couple questions about the use, how the design of the park is. Before I kind of go to those questions and maybe some of my own personal thoughts, I'm kind of curious how the community engagement would fit into the process. So, we've had a lot of community engagement for prior parks, most recently the Ann Street Park,
Right.
where we get a lot of feedback, which, I think we as a board think is important because that really allows the community to play a part in what the community needs are. So how would that process here go into, how would we be able to take the community input and make sure that this is something that would be wanted and used by the community?
Okay. So I believe that I've gotten a list of the process for the whole new idea for a park, and we have to go to the Parks and Rec first to get approved. Then we come to you guys to get approval for it to continue on to that process. The next process is community input. And Jen has indicated over there that it would be a collaboration with the Parks and Rec Board. I believe they would probably do like a train depot like they did for Ann Street Park, have a storyboard and have people be able to put post-it notes and give us their input. And then they would gather that information. The Parks and Rec Board would gather that information. And of course, we would like to be a part of that too. And then they would come back with some recommendations on what the community input was. Because that is town property, absolutely. It's not our sole, our sole decision to make.
Right, so I
This
would
is a starting
Right.
point.
I think it's important that we allow time for the
Yes.
community to give input. So with that being said, I can give my personal commissioner input, right? But understanding that the community's input is probably the most valuable. So the first thing is kind of getting, I think, to Commissioner Cooper, having these picnic tables usable, right? Because that would be the idea, is that people actually use these. Right
Yes.
now, they're on a concrete slab. You don't generally see people sitting there for too long. I haven't done like an in-depth study, but when I go back and forth, I don't see people using them very frequently. I think part of it is because there's no shade there.
Well, that and they're splintery. They're not very enticing, to be honest. They're not very
So I
welcoming.
wonder, getting to Commissioner Cooper's thoughts, were there ideas to put some of the, and maybe you don't do all of them, but some of the benches and the picnic tables closer to the water? I think, a lot of people, when they come, they want to sit close to the water. It's one reason why that gazebo probably is so popular. It is close to the water.
Right.
Could it be, and would that keep it out of the way of the pirate invasion, having a lot of the seating closer to the water? And was there a consideration to use trees or shade tents? Because personally, I don't think, as nice as these picnic tables could be, it's sunny here very frequently, almost every day of the year, and I just don't think people are going to use them the way they did. When Commissioner Cooper and I were at the Main Street Conference the past 2 years, we learned very clearly people use third spaces when there's seating and when there's shade. And when there's not, they tend not to be used.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and I hope that maybe we can listen to what the community says, obviously, for their input on this. The issue about planting the trees, I'm not a professional gardener, but we didn't want to block the view of the water, first and foremost. We really wanted it to remain open, since we do have shade at Great and Paul. I think that was very important to Mr. Uri, to have that water access for everybody, and then the winds and the high winds. But we can definitely, try to consider that. It's hard for things to grow and to have it watered and to maintain a tree and things like that. So that's probably one reason. We were just trying to keep it very simple to start with. But the fact that those are the tables are not attached to the brick promenade, they can definitely be put in a different location.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that was just, one of the main points we learned is you have to have
Yes.
shade, especially in the south, especially where it's
I
hot.
understand, I know. Exactly, it does get hot.
And then I will also second Commissioner Cooper. I have a small toddler. I would love to have something interactive that he could climb on. And I don't think it has to be a big playground. It could be even one small statue that's like a turtle or a bird or a dolphin or something that allows for kids to climb on. And I'm not saying that it has to go, like, we're not trying to tell you how to spend your money, so maybe it doesn't go in this phase of the park, but if it could be recognized, like, hey, this is part of the plan, and maybe a future donor donates, and it's, you can donate that
Absolutely.
bird or egret or turtle, and
Right.
that becomes an interactive piece that the child can climb on. I would think maybe we could think creatively towards that option, because I would agree, we don't really
Yes.
have anything like that downtown. So
No, we
my
don't.
son goes and tries to climb on the live oak trees downtown and other things he shouldn't be climbing on.
Exactly.
I've been to a lot of parks, especially on the waterfront, other parts of the country that have those options, and it's really great. So
Right.
if we could
We want to
consider that.
collaborate with the Garden Club too, and also the Arts in Beaufort, and that would be a great thing if Arts in Beaufort would like to come up, and present that to us, because we would love to fund that. This is an unusual situation. We're actually kind of initiating the project because we want to get started, but in the long term, we are going to be, we want to issue grants to other nonprofits and other organizations. So if they can come to us and say, we'd really like to put this turtle sculpture, maybe it could be, in that, like on the other side of that promenade, then that would be something that we would definitely look at as a foundation to help fund. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of partnership that I was thinking about.
Right.
Another question is, so the brick pavers, so I think they would be much lovelier than what we have now, the concrete pad, that is pretty ugly, I think we all admit that. What kind of drainage would those pavers have? You know, this is right next to the water.
Yes, they would be permeable pavers. It's similar, they'd be the same pavers that were being put right now on Front Street. Is that correct, Matt? We believe so. Yeah,
So you said pervious or impervious?
yeah, they would be pervious. They would be, is that the right way? Correct me if
They
I'm
would allow
wrong.
water
Okay.
to go
Yes,
through,
yes, the
right?
water should drain through, absolutely.
Okay, well,
And we
that,
want it to match what you're going to do at Ann Street
Right.
Park and on Front Street. So we want it to have some, some continuity in the
and
parks.
again, this may be for a future phase of the park, but, you know, it'd be great to have some sort of example of a stormwater control measure, and maybe these would count, I'm not sure, but even to have a little educational sign that explains why this is important. It's right by the water. Lots of people, thousands of people are gonna see this, so I think it's a great teaching opportunity.
Absolutely.
The town is very invested in that, you know, it helps make our town more resilient, so I was just thinking in that regard, if these are pervious, then we wanna highlight them and tell the town, you know, why these
Absolutely.
are important.
Absolutely. We maybe even incorporate that into the QR code as well.
Absolutely. I think that's most of my questions. Thank you very much, and again, we're very excited to have the foundation be involved.
Well, we are equally as excited to get this started and to really enhance this area of the town.
Commissioner LaPicola?
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate you
welcome.
coming in. Appreciate the Community Foundation for making this happen. I think beautification of parks in our community are so important, open space so important, and obviously we want to make sure that what we have here is, you know, serves the whole community. So, you know, when I look at that, you kind of think about how, you know, function and use, you know, kind of fit the design, right? So kind of trying to understand like that, what that kind of means as time goes on and what the main, I guess, use will be. You know, I guess hearing about the pirate invasion, which is basically one weekend of the year. We hate to have the park or set up just for that. And I think it's great that we have the benches and tables and gathering space there. But I do agree with Commissioner Spiegler. I think, you know, the amount of use that park gets, because you constantly see that park being used for, you know, during the day, throughout the week, parades and so forth, and people are constantly looking for cover and shade. We have so much sunlight and so much heat out there. Having a place where people can kind of gather and get out of that would be fantastic there. And possibly even just putting trees maybe on the western or further east on the park, just to kind of along the border, to possibly still create a canopy and still allow for open space might be maybe kind of a trade-off or a compromise.
Yes.
But, you know, understanding what that park is going to be used for, and I think working with Parks and Rec and working with the community to really understand what do we want to happen there, how do we want this thing to look, and what's the use going to be moving forward. You know, will this place be a gathering space where we have events or we have you know, music and so forth, or is that going to be more over at John Newton Park? So I think Parks and Rec really needs to play that role in that space, along with you know, the support of the foundation. You know, all of these things are going to be important. And I think as the board kind of moves through this, seeing what the community says and wants, hopefully the foundation can still agree to maybe little tweaks that might be in there.
Oh, for sure. This is a starting point.
If the community kind of feels like we want to try to do this or put that in there, you know, I do agree. I think, you know, the tables and chairs and things like that there, metal can be very hot in the summertime. Even Polywood at certain colors
Everything's
can be
hot.
extremely, you know, hot and cause people to have, you know, issues with sitting on them. So sometimes the wood can be a little bit easier. It may not hold up as well, but sometimes it can be a little bit easier on the bottom. So all these things will be great. It'd be great to see what comes of this, and I really do appreciate your time and you guys coming to us and having a great idea to kind of beautify the park. So
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. And I know everything does get hot, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So, but we're looking forward to a community input session to hear what they have to say. And hopefully we can, you know, we can accommodate that within our budget. So, or may have to have another phase to add to later. So definitely looking forward to hearing what they have to say.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else?
Commissioner Gilligan?
Mary, thank you for your presentation on behalf of the foundation. Excited that this is your initial project that you're launching into and excited for that to come to fruition. I understand the concerns about the viewscape to the water, but I love looking through a live oak tree to the water, so I'm a little biased on that. And I do agree about the need for shade, so I'm curious to see what the community is going to say about that and if they bring that up. And yeah, the tree would be maintenance at first, but if it's a native, if it's a live oak, then eventually it won't have to be cared for or cared for very little until one of those big swirly things comes over here and takes a few branches down. So really appreciate the forward thinking on the permeable pavers.
For sure, yes,
That is
absolutely.
awesome. Super excited about this and can't wait to see what tweaks the community suggests and can't wait to accept it in the future.
Yay, thank you.
So
You
thanks,
always-
Mary.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Well, I know you're ready to get out the hot seat, but I just want to say thank
Yes,
you
I
to the foundation for willing to be a partner in this. Your generous partnership, along with balancing out with what our community has to say, is going to really be a powerful example of what you guys can do moving forward. So I'm
That's right.
excited about
That's right.
that.
That's right.
I do like the fact that you've kept things as clean and simple, and the reason being is that I've had many conversations with Mr. Uri, and his intent in wanting to donate this land was to make sure that our citizens were able to have a view of the water, keeping it clean and simple. So I do like that. And if you ever run out of space, I know putting the tables in, under a tree, that's going to be very, you've heard that before, but you've got Graydon Paul Park right next door,
You do.
which is fairly shaded. So if you ever wanted to kind of scoot over, I think that would be a little
We
bit
did have some
extra
cold,
landscape.
didn't we?
Yes. Now, with the handicap tables, that's rings to my ear, because I've actually seen a lot of people who are coming that are, they're mobile with their devices. They're
Right.
getting around and they're getting out. We want to be able to make sure they are incorporated and are able to enjoy the space. But getting up to the table would be a little bit of an issue, because there's a ledge there with a little lip.
There is a little bit of an,
Is there a little bit of an incline? Is there any way that we can widen that? Because a lot of hover-rounds are a little bit bigger, they're fancier. To be able to get up to access those tables would be a consideration, not necessarily, I'm hoping that the Park and Rec members, oh, look, I see many of them out there now, can
Yes.
take a look at that, and maybe that could be part of a suggestion, being able to access that if you're wheelchair-bound or if you're using a device. Would be the only consideration. And thank you so much for stepping forward, and as many has said, making this your inaugural project.
You're
And we look
welcome.
forward to more.
all right, thank you.
All right.
No more questions? Am I done?
You're done. You're done. You did a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Well, thank you for your time, and I know you're very busy. We appreciate you getting us on the agenda for today.
Okay,
So, all right, we
appreciate
look forward to moving forward.
Yes, thank you for your time. And Craig, you worked real hard on this. I know you did too. I know you didn't say much, but thank you very much for your time. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the item number 2, which is the wastewater treatment plant, utility rates, and capital improvement plan review. And look, Mr. Churchill knows exactly where to go.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you again this evening.
Okay.
Stephen and I have met recently with the Utility Rate Committee on a couple of occasions and spoken actually about the wastewater treatment plant and wastewater needs here in the town. They had asked at the last meeting that we come back today and maybe talk a little bit more about the water system, and so that's what I've actually come prepared to talk to this evening. But before I get into that, I do want to bring one item to your attention, and this is dealing with the wastewater treatment plant. So we had been under contract to perform a water effects ratio study relative to the total copper limit that was added to the NPDES discharge permit for the wastewater treatment plant. And that work has been completed now, and we have a final report that we have provided maybe within the last week to the town staff. And we were recommending that the town move forward with the next step. The results of this study were very favorable to the town of Beaufort. Currently, the permit includes total copper monthly average effluent limits of 3.7 micrograms per liter. With the water effect ratio value that has been ascertained through this study, we would ask the state to modify the permit to increase that from 3.7 micrograms per liter to 12.1 micrograms per liter. And then with the total copper daily maximum effluent limit, which currently is assigned at 5.8 micrograms per liter, by applying the water effects ratio result, that would be, we would ask for a modification to 18.8 micrograms per liter. And if that is approved, that should provide the town you should be able to very comfortably meet those total copper limits without having to make any further modifications to the plant. So many times when we get an NPDES permit modification, we're trying to figure out what can we do at the plant to try to meet that limit. The state, however, does allow this exercise, and they included this as an option for the town to pursue. The town has pursued it, and the result, from our vantage point, should be quite favorable. The next step for us would be to apply on your behalf for this modification to your NPDES permit, specifically to increase the total copper limit for the wastewater discharge. So with that being said, I'm simply looking for direction, Matt.
So traditionally, this would be administratively approved. We had met 3 weeks ago, and now we're here tonight to talk. So what I wanted to do, Greg and I discussed it prior to the start of this meeting. If you have no objections, we would authorize Rivers to submit that to DEQ to seek favorable outcome. But I just wanted to make sure the entire council was aware before we moved.
Any questions before we ask for a consensus of the board?
Just one question.
Sure.
How long does it normally take when, you've submitted these in before, I'm sure, how long does it normally take to get a
Well,
response?
interestingly, it's not often that we request, in fact, I don't even know if I've ever requested a modification for one parameter in an effluent limit. We're typically asking for either speculative limits, or we're asking to completely modify, or maybe secure a brand new NPDES permit. And unfortunately, that takes a long time. It takes as much as probably a year or more sometimes, but I do not expect that to be the case here. They have outlined these steps in your permit, and so I feel like this is something that they will turn around fairly quickly. You ask me to take a guess, I'll say, let's give them a few months to respond, you know? And certainly we'll try to stay behind them and follow up and try to make sure things are on track. But,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Following your lead and your expertise on this,
Yes, sir.
the increases is going to benefit us in what way? Because you threw out some milligrams this and that, and I'm like, whoa.
Yes,
So
sir.
if you just break that down.
Certainly. So the concern initially when we received, and the town received the modified NPDES permit 2025, I think it was, 2024, 2025, we saw that the permit now included metals limits, including this total copper limit. Some of the previous annual testing, what they call the annual pollutant scan that the town was required to do, showed that you had total copper effluent that exceeded the values in the new permit. And so given that, we got to figure out, okay, what do we do about this? We either have to try to figure out a way to treat to get the total copper down lower to stay within the limit, or in this event, they allowed you the opportunity to look at what they call a site-specific water effect ratio. So we and our subconsultant, BT Solutions, looked at your site-specific conditions and follow the EPA's protocol for developing this site-specific water effect ratio. And then there's a mathematical formula that you just plug that water effect ratio into, and it allows you to increase or adjust let's call it the textbook answers, which were in your permit, to a site-specific answer. And so in this event, it's increasing the limit, so you should have no concerns. None of the values that the town has measured for total copper to this point exceed these limits, if we can get them to get NPDES to increase the limits based on this water effect ratio.
So all this metal stuff, does it go out into the creeks?
Yes, it's a part of your effluent. You're taking your raw wastewater, taking it to your wastewater treatment plant. You're treating that wastewater to a very high quality effluent, and then that effluent is discharged to Taylor's Creek. But, NPDES and EPA, they're constantly looking at new parameters of concern, things that they feel like should be regulated. And these metals are kind of the most recent round of parameters that the NPDES unit and EPA are looking forward to monitor. So you are not alone. I mean, we're seeing these total copper, total lead, limits on practically all of our clients' permit limits. So, but you're the first one that I've had the privilege to be able to do a water effect ratio study for and ask for an adjustment in the effluent limit.
Okay.
Yep.
So now Taylor Creek, by standard, is kind of off limits for either swimming or taking any type of crustacean and stuff out of the water. Do we other than the state monitor it, but do we also monitor it?
No, you monitor it. Donovan and his operators monitor, what is the effluent quality that's leaving the wastewater treatment plant and entering into Taylor's Creek. They also monitor the water quality within the creek, both upstream and downstream of the discharge point. So they can kind of tell and make sure that we're staying within the requirements of the state.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Commissioner LaPiccolo, did you have one?
I had a question. Would increasing the limits allow for increasing the capacity in the future? And
There's a whole laundry list of effluent parameters in that NPDES discharge permit. And, you got things like biochemical oxygen demand, you got total nitrogen, you've got total suspended solids, you've got total copper, you've got dissolved oxygen. There's a whole laundry list of those things. And, typically what is, for most projects, what ends up becoming the limit is going to be something like what quantity of total nutrients are you able to discharge, like on a mass loading basis. So this specific limitation, I don't think it really has much to do with the quantity of effluent that you discharge into the creek. Really, the big kicker down here for forever has really been, Shellfish Sanitation's concern about, help me out, about coliforms, thank you. Either fecal or enterococci, that type of thing. So we have discussed on previous occasions whether the town perhaps, in fact, we have written a letter on the town's behalf requesting speculative limits for increased effluent flow to Taylor's Creek. We don't have a response on that yet. When we receive a response, the first thing that's likely going to happen is that they're going to say, you have to pass this by Shellfish Sanitation, and they're going to want to do a dye study. And we've talked about a lot of those things previously. But we do have that in the works. So we have written NPDES and we've requested spec limits for going from 1.5 million gallons per day of effluent to 1.85, as well as to go to 2.25 MGD. So we're just waiting right now for their response.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, okay.
Dexter?
Other questions?
Just a follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Part of the study was to show that Taylor's Creek, from an assimilative capacity, could handle the increase in the limit
Correct.
without environmental or public health issues.
Correct. I mean, that's really the point of it, is to show that the town can dispose of effluent with a higher total copper amount that will not be detrimental to your site.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
That was helpful. Do we know how close we are to the limit where that would not be true anymore, where it would be detrimental when we're putting it out?
Donovan, there you are. I'm going from memory, Donovan, so help me out if I'm off. Seems to me, when I looked at Donovan's daily monitoring reports most recently, we were seeing total copper like down in the 1s and 2s and maybe not even over 3, right? 2s and 3s, okay. So, you can see that we were close to meeting the limits as they came out in the permit, albeit there were some values from the previous annual pollutant scans from a few years ago that exceeded those limits, and that was the driver for wanting to pursue this. So you should have plenty of comfort level, I would say, if we're successful in getting the monthly average to 12.1 and the daily max to 18.8 when you're seeing values on 2 to 3. So, any other questions?
No, but you just need a consensus of the board for the staff to go ahead and move forward to engage Rivers.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, we got heads shaking. All right, we got green light.
Perfect. We'll move forward.
As
Thank you so much.
instructed, we will go ahead and submit that to DEQ. Greg, thank you for all your explanation today.
Yep, fantastic. Okay, so now tonight we're here to talk a little bit about the water supply and treatment infrastructure capacity and future needs. We've talked pretty extensively about the wastewater side of things, so tonight is kind of a little refresher and what have you on the water system. So, hope you can see this okay. We in the town together have done quite a bit of work over the years relative to the water system. And I just, for those of you who've not been around as long as I have, I kind of just wanted to step through some of the things that have been done in the past. So all the way back in 2005, the town hired Rivers to do a comprehensive water study. And when I say comprehensive, that was looking at everything. It was looking at your treatment plants, it was looking at your wells, it was looking at your distribution system, it was looking at your elevated storage tanks. And the short answer to that report, or the recommendations that came out of that comprehensive water study back in 2005, it recommended that the town consider designing and constructing a new 2.4 million gallon per day water treatment plant with the associated wells, new raw water wells that would accompany that, the raw water transmission mains that would be required to move that water from the new wells to the water treatment plant, as well as finished water transmission mains to transmit that treated water, that finished treated water, back toward the Pine Street elevated storage tank, because that's kind of where your system all started. That's where everything kind of emanates from that area. So you got to refeed the new water supply to that area of town. Included in that comprehensive study was a full hydraulic analysis of your distribution system, and there were a number of recommendations that came out of that hydraulic analysis. These included various transmission improvements, particularly relative to fire flow. The town's fire department back at that time requested certain minimum fire flows throughout town. There were 6 different areas that they asked us to look at. And the town's hydraulic or distribution system was not able to meet those requested or desirable fire flows at that point in time. In addition, one of the things that probably spurred a lot of this activity was, at the time, I believe it was called North River Club, and Kyle, it's now Beaufort Club, is that correct? So everybody knows where I'm talking about? So that was to be a really, really large development that was to occur, out Highway 70. And so another one of the recommendations at that time was to consider putting another elevated storage tank out at North Beaufort Club in order to extend your hydraulic grade, expand your hydraulic grade of your system. Okay, moving forward. 2007, the town contracted with Rivers to begin a test well study, as well as to do an engineering alternatives analysis for an NPDES discharge permit for this new water treatment plant, in addition to an environmental assessment. So at that time, we actually were able to drill test wells on 7 different sites scattered about town, and all of those sites panned out quite well as far as being a Castlehane production well for the future for the town. 2 of those 7 sites were actually converted into full-blown production well sites. So your well number 4, the Glenda Drive remote well on what I still call the Mashburn property. I'm not really sure what it's referred to now. I hope you know where I'm talking about. So that production well was ultimately developed from that test well study. In addition, this, what I call the Sycamore Drive production well number 5, which replaced your first and oldest production well number 1 that served Pine Street. That was also one of the test wells that were done. But there's 5 other sites scattered about town that the town invested money, the town got results. Unfortunately, town doesn't own the sites. And so that, I bring that up because that is something that I'll come back to, and it's really kind of a recommendation on our part. You know, that's part of your future water supply. And if there's any way the town is able to see fit at some point to be able to secure those sites, you know, you've already invested money on those sites. And so that would probably be a wise thing to look to pursue as we move forward. The hydrogeological firm that was working with us at the time, Groundwater Management Associates, they estimate from the water quality and the well yield from those test wells that you could produce Castlehane production wells that would produce about 650 gallons per minute per well site. Okay? Okay. Next, I started hitting on this already, 2007 Glenda Drive production well 4. So that's where we developed that project, developed that production well, and extended the raw water transmission main from that production well site to the Glenda Drive water treatment plant. 2007, existing water treatment plants design study. So this was another NPDES action. This was a new NPDES requirement for your 2 existing water treatment plants. And it among other things, it required dechlorination. It assigned a total residual chlorine limit to your waste effluent, your backwash water, your softening water. And so in addition to that, it had total suspended solids limits. So the town asked us to do a study to try to figure out what can we do to meet this limit. And we provided that study. And I'll tell you what that means here in a minute. 2008, Blue Treasure came to town, and through a lot of negotiation, the pre-annexation agreement was put together, and a lot of that, of course, dealt with wastewater. Some of it also dealt with water. Part of that water was that those developers were to provide you a site for a well, which was where the Sycamore Drive well, production well number 5, was developed, as well as they were to provide land to the town for a future elevated storage tank. Okay. Next, 2008 existing water treatment plants dechlorination. So we designed improvements to the waste side of your existing water treatment plants in order to dechlorinate the waste stream so it could still meet the effluent limits for those 2 existing plants. 2008 North River water system evaluation. So a lot of moving parts at this point in time. You know, the Great Recession was kind of coming on at that point in time. A lot of the commissioners at that point in time were saying, you know, hey, we can't really afford a 2.4 million gallon per day water treatment plant. Could we possibly look at cutting that back? And we did take another look at that, and we all agreed that with the changes that were occurring due to the Great Recession, that those original projections were probably too aggressive at that point in time. So it was trimmed back, and it was trimmed back to looking at the possibility of doing a new 1.4 million gallon per day water treatment plant that could be expanded to 2.8 million gallons per day. And the thought was that we would, when the new water plant came online, that we would take Pine Street offline, and that Glenda would continue to operate in parallel with the new water treatment plant for a period of time. And so Glenda, with the second well, can treat 0.72 million gallons per day. So 1.4 plus 0.72, you're at 2.12 million gallons per day. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, but we also had some interested commissioners in, hey, could we consider partnering with the North River water system, the Carteret County system? At that time, I know the Carteret County system was really, really struggling financially, and they were trying to look for, any kind of partnerships, ways they could try to cost share and things of that nature. So we actually updated the hydraulic model at that point in time, and we did show like a 200,000 gallon per day connection with a booster pump from the North River system to augment or help to supply some water to the town of Beaufort if required. I don't think that ever got put in, did it? Donovan, is that? It is? I mean, we have help me out here. We have an emergency interconnect. Right, so this booster pump station was not pursued, but there is an emergency interconnect between the town of Beaufort's distribution system and the North River water system. Okay, next, 2008 water treatment plant site evaluation, Mashburn property. So you will see the acronym LASER, L-A-S-E-R, on some slides. It stands for Land Acquisition Site Evaluation Report. So we evaluated the Mashburn property for a new water plant, an emergency services facility, and a new town hall. The town ultimately did purchase that property and held it for a period of time. Ultimately, I think it was sold and it's being redeveloped now. 2009, Pine Street water treatment production well. So that was the development of the new production well at Sycamore and the raw water main to feed to the Pine Street water plant. 2017, the town received grant monies to do a water asset inventory assessment, and a lot of the recommendations, that I have for you today still come from that asset inventory assessment and water asset management plan. 2021 is the USDA-funded water main replacement project that we're trying to wrap up now. 2022, we were asked to do another laser for the Penner's Point property. That one did not pan out very well. The town did not purchase that property. 2023, we were asked to do another laser for what I call the Gibbs property, which the town secured that site, as I understand, and still owns it to this point. Boy, that was a mouthful. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so your current water supply. You have 4 Castlehane aquifer wells. They're aged 13, 15, 40, and 71 years old. The well number 2 has a 36-year-old motor in that 71-year-old well. The town is currently permitted under the Central Coastal Plain Capacity Use Area to withdraw as much as 1.872 million gallons per day. You currently have 4 wells that will deliver a 12-hour capacity of 1.678 MGD. Just to sort of try to put things in perspective to you, your current annual average daily demand is about 0.564 million gallons per day in 2024. Matt has brought this point out before, so I wanted to bring this out again. It's not so much in Beaufort about the annual demand, it's about what happens during the summertime. Summertime, your annual average daily demand is about 0.744 MGD, but the real key number is that last one, the max daily demand. So during the summertime, your max daily demand in 2024 was 0.947 MGD. So your water plant should be designed and developed, and your wells and supporting infrastructure has to be able to produce max day demand, okay? That would be the very minimum that your plant needs to be able to handle. Okay, current water treatment. Your 2 existing water plants at Glenda and Pine Street with their wells will do 0.72 MGD each and a 1.4 million gallons per day total capacity, finished water capacity. Annual average, those are the same numbers again, just for reference. Pine Street Water Plant, you have 3 building structures there. They're aged between 37 and 100 years old. You have 4 softener vessels that are 37 years old. The brine storage tank was installed the same time that the Glenda well was put in. It's 13 years old. You have an aerator, a cascade aerator, and a 10,000 gallon clear well, which is well undersized for that particular facility. And it uses chlorine disinfection and fluoride as far as chemical adjustments. You have 2 high service pumps to move the water up into the elevated storage tanks. They're 13 years old and 71 years old. And the NPDES permit that I referenced earlier Ultimately, another renewal occurred for the NPDES permit, and it added the total copper limits to your water treatment plants. And the town evaluated options and ultimately decided that in lieu of trying to make design improvements, that they would be better off to discharge the waste effluent from the water plants into your sanitary sewer collection system. So it then travels through the wastewater treatment plant and out through the effluent discharge into Taylor's Creek. So the result of that was the NPDES unit rescinded those permits. So you no longer have NPDES discharge permits associated with your 2 water treatment plants, only with your wastewater treatment plant.
Can you pause there? Does that answer the question from Friday?
I think so, yes.
We
I
had a
think so.
question on that Friday, and I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to make sure that we slowed down and paused there about the NPDES rescission of the permits for water.
Can you repeat that, what you just said?
Well, let me start back. You tell me when I've gone too far back. I don't remember the time frame, but, let's just say the last permit renewal cycle for the NPDES permits for the 2 existing water treatment plants, the total copper limits were added to those permits. So the least expensive way of addressing that was to simply tie the discharge from the water treatment plants into the gravity sewer collection system right in the same street. It was just right there, And so those connections were made, and the town began just discharging to the collection system, goes through the wastewater treatment plant, goes out into Taylor's Creek. And so as a follow-up, I don't honestly know whether the town requested rescission or whether NPDES just did it on their own. Donovan, do you know? Yeah. Bottom line is you were no longer using your NPDES discharge permits for those 2 plants anymore. So they just rescinded them. So you do not have active NPDES discharge permits for those 2 water plants. Yes, sir.
What were the discharge points at the time that we had the NPDES permits?
It was the roadside ditch right beside the water plants. That's correct.
Okay. And
of course, they were called out ultimately to their ultimate destination,
Right.
which Glenda would have been to Turner Creek, and Pine Street would have been to Town Creek. So you're hitting roadside ditches, and the water is making its way down to a culvert and ultimately making its way to those 2 receiving waters.
Okay, and just one more, from an expense standpoint, and looking at a new water treatment plant, is it less expensive to do the treatment there for the discharge, or just to discharge it into the current sewer plant?
Can you ask me that one more time?
Sure. Is there, if you had if you were permitting a new plant today, would you be better off financially to treat there and discharge versus tying into the line and going to our current wastewater treatment plant?
Still not sure if I'm there, but let me talk through it and you tell me where I'm getting off. So, by and large, if we design a new water treatment plant, depends on the type of the plant, but what we're talking about here in Beaufort is a nanofiltration plant. It's a membrane plant. So frankly, there really isn't any additional treatment on the concentrate stream. The concentrate stream will be separated from the permeate stream. The permeate stream gets additional chemical treatment, and that's what we drink. The concentrate stream, we will apply to try to get an NPDES discharge permit to blend that effluent into the receiving water. And it's going to require a core mixed dilution model and all of those things.
So that would be a
go along
direct
with it.
discharge?
Say it again?
That would be a direct discharge?
That would be a direct discharge, yes.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking, is it more expensive to treat for that direct discharge versus tying into the system to take that discharge? to
Well,
the
undoubtedly,
wastewater
I'm sorry, I get you now. It's certainly more expensive to take that new concentrate line to a direct discharge than it would be to tie into those
Right.
existing sanitary sewer.
Right.
I mean, that was minimal expense because the sanitary sewer was like 20 feet away from the end of the existing discharge pipe. You follow me?
I am, so that's the reason I'm asking
Yeah.
that, because I read in the literature where you were talking about seeking another NPDES permit.
Yeah. Right.
for that new water treatment plant, and I was curious as to why we would do that versus discharge to the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, no. We would not want to take the discharge from a water plant through the wastewater treatment plant because you're consuming capacity.
Right.
What we often do is take the discharges from a water plant and the discharge from a wastewater plant that's been treated, right?
Right.
And we bring them together and then discharge them together into, say, like a Taylor's Creek.
Okay.
Which would be certainly one of the ideas that we would want to think about for the town of Beaufort in the future.
So
Had
that
another
that would
thought,
be
but-
running
had another-
lines from the new water treatment facility to the wastewater treatment, or to where the effluent basically runs
Right.
into the
That's
creek.
correct. So wherever the new water treatment plant would be, we have to get that discharge to an acceptable discharge location. And that's a big deal around Beaufort, right? And I'm getting ahead of myself, but you know, you've got a whole lot of SA high-quality waters around you and very little SC waters, right? Taylor's Creek is a SC water, Town Creek is an SC water. Those are your two most likely avenues to be able to try to get a discharge permit. Taylor's Creek probably has better flushing and, you know, you're gonna get better dilution and whatever from Taylor's Creek in all likelihood than you would for Town Creek. But yes.
And
Did I answer your question?
how many gallons a year are you talking about for discharge from a water treatment facility?
Yeah, it's 20%, no more than 20%. Sometimes it can be less than that, but let's just pretend for a minute you were talking about a 1 million gallon per day water treatment plant. Then the concentrate portion is 200,000 gallons per day. So you can kind of extrapolate that up. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I think in a very layman's terms, it's still a serious amount of water. And when you're talking about a water effects ratio study, reduction of a copper limit or another limit, and then you're talking about slug loading, you're working through a very complex problem, which is why this subcommittee was doing these deep dives, but also why the whole entire council is being shared with this data today, is because we want to make sure that these technical style questions are answered to the entire group, and there's not a grapevine effect of sharing of information, because this is a difficult, we're looking downstream, no pun intended, you're looking forward in the future, and having to make a lot of decisions today about where you are with a rate structure, about the sustainability of your system, what your options are, because if you get out of this meeting and you have extremely technical questions, these are the type of formulas that we're trying to get them answered. So I appreciate you slowing it down.
Yeah, no problem. And the only downside, and this is me talking, I've never heard anybody with the state or MPDS say this. The only downside of having the two existing MPDS permits rescinded are when you go to them, you say, hey, I'd like a new NPDS permit. Sure, it's nice to be able to say, I'm going to give you two of them back. We just want one, you know, because, you know, but you know, that's just my feeling. But I think the town did what was expedient and what they had to do at the time, you know. So,
Hindsight's 20/20, right? Yeah.
Well, you're only going to be able to make decisions with all the data that you have today.
sure.
No one would have anticipated the
That's right.
crash of '08. You saw the numbers were all pointing to a high consumption, which is why you were looking at 2.4 million. Then you went through a constricted phase. 6 months ago, we probably wouldn't have anticipated $5 a gallon diesel fuel today. There's just all these pieces that you make decisions with the metrics that you have at the time of it, right? So you have a lot of big calls coming in front of us here in the next 60 to 90 days while we're looking at rate setting.
Okay, so similarly over at the Glenda plant, there's two structures. They're 40 years old. There's an on-site generator. The two softener vessels there are 20 years old and 40 years old. The brine tank was also replaced at the same time. It's 13 years old. There's a 300,000 gallon clear well there with a cascade aerator on top of it. It also uses chlorine disinfection and fluoride injection. The two high service pumps there are 40 years old, and likewise that NPDS permit was rescinded. Okay, catch up with myself here. Okay. All right. Storage capacity. So the town has 710,000 gallons of finished water storage. Most of that, of course, is in the two elevated storage tanks. They're 200,000 gallons each. And the one ground storage tank of consequence is 300,000. And then there's that other 10,000 gallon storage tank that will go away. The ages of those elevated storage tanks are 39 years and 51 years. And they are being taken care of well through contract maintenance. The only regulatory requirement other than, your elevated tanks, of course, are providing the pressure throughout the system, right, to drive the system. But you have to have 1/2 of your annual average daily demand in storage. So that's only 282,000 gallons, so you're well above that threshold. Water distribution, a lot of this came from your 2019 water asset inventory assessment. 47.9 miles, 1-inch to 12-inch pipes, 888 valves. You can read that. I don't need to read it to you. A lot of it is older, 17% greater than 50 years, 83% less than. Is that backwards, Stephen? Do you know? That sounds backwards, doesn't it? No, I guess it's not. My bad. Still a lot of cast iron pipe and galvanized pipe, mostly in the historic district. A lot of the asbestos cement pipe, mostly north of Cedar Street and east of Live Oak Street. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the fire flow demands are not being met currently. Okay, we did want to point out that your current USDA water main replacement project is dealing with some of this. Not all of it, but some of it. So this current project replaces 1,700 linear feet of 6-inch asbestos cement pipe. We're replacing 10,000 feet approximately of cast iron water main. About 3,400 linear feet of that is being upsized from 6-inch to 12-inch. And that, again, is to try to help with some of these fire demand issues. Also, there was 500 linear feet of 4-inch cast iron that was upsized to 6-inch, and 1,700 linear feet of 2-inch galvanized water main that's upsized to 6-inch, and 320 feet of 2-inch PVC water main that's upsized to 6-inch. And so in total, there's about 17,420 feet, 3.3 miles of water main that are being replaced with your current USDA project, and about 28 fire hydrants. Okay, and Stephen, I can't even read that. Do you want?
So this is a visual representation of statistics that Greg just went through there. So the blue lines that are seen here, those are the areas where we're doing replacement for light diameter sides. Where you're seeing the green line, that's where we're doing the upsize. Down there in the lower west part of the historic downtown, that's where you're getting the 12-inch upsize there. And that's because when you did your 2017 water AIA, one of the things it noticed was you weren't getting good fire flow or required fire flow in your historic downtown area. So that's why that 12-inch upsize was recommended. The other areas where it's doing like-for-like replacement, like Greg touched on, it's going to be where you have cast iron, galvanized, or asbestos cement pipe. We've also found a lot of lead soldered connections during this removals too. So these would be deficiencies to where if you did a future water treatment plant and you had increased pressures in your system, these would be the lines that would maybe likely have breaks or need repairs once they went online.
Okay. Okay, condition. So you do have currently adequate capacity for your existing consumptive demands. You have redundancy because you've got 2 wells at each of your water treatment plant sites. There's 5 test wells that have previously been tested. These sites are not owned by the town at present. Wells number 2 and 3, those are the oldest ones, age 40 and 71. They're at or nearing their expected service life. And then as far as your water treatment, again, we have adequate capacity for your existing demands. You have redundancy because you have 2 water treatment plants. Most towns don't have 2 water treatment plants. You do realize that, right? Most people have 1 water, but there are a few out there that have 2. So there's redundancy there. There is some, I don't know, Donovan, if any of this has been addressed, so speak up if it has, please. I mean, there is some rusting electrical gear. Obviously, there were challenges associated with that MPDS discharge, which led to the forfeiture and the rescission. And these plants are frankly nearing or exceeding their expected service life. The high service pump over at Pine Street certainly has exceeded its its service life. And then obviously there's space limitations at the Pine Street water treatment plant as well. Most of these were things that were documented in that asset inventory assessment and water asset management plan. As far as elevated water storage, your
Before you-
tank maintenance.
Greg,
Yes, excuse me.
before you continue, will you go back 2
Yes, sir.
slides for me real fast?
Okay.
To the map.
One more?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Let's take a minute. Stephen, can we explain that with the water project, what you see on this map, that the water lines would not be completed in 2026, that some of this work is going to go into 2027. The result of that going into 2027 is going to cause for our roadway disruption to remain, and asphalt replacement would not occur until which sections are fully replaced. So first question for the public, when might we see conclusion of the current water system replacement? That's question one. And when might we see asphalt or patching over top of those? That would be very helpful for today.
Yeah, so the completion of, just so the public's aware, contract one, the sewer improvements are wrapping up right now. Fulford Street is the end of it. Contract three, Sunland Builders' responsibility for the stormwater improvements. The stormwater is installed. We've got to do cleanup work and stuff, but the utility is installed and can be certified. TA Loving is beginning phase two, which is the last phase of the water main improvements at the end of this month, April 1st, and they're scheduled to last 12 months. And that'll be the completion of all the SDA utility improvements. The areas that are shown on this map that have to do.
I don't know if we need a mic, to be honest with you.
You can come up here if you want.
I was like, I'm not speaking loud enough?
I thought you were doing great.
Right, so I'll say that last point again, the phase two and the final USDA utility improvements will start at the end of this month, and they are scheduled to last for 12 months. Those water main improvements for phase two are gonna be due with that green line there with West Ann Street. Is gonna be the blue line running down Pine Street. And that little bit on Ocean Drive is honestly the bulk of your phase two. So mostly it's Ann Street and Pine Street. And so those will be your last areas to get patched. We are currently in preliminary design for the Town of Beaufort's asphalt resurfacing project, which we will take out to bid this year. As part of that preliminary design is we have to go street by street and determine which streets should be patched now and then overlaid, and which streets should not be patched, and the remaining of the asphalt just be removed and we do a new street. That's what's being determined right now, and that will kind of impact the timelines of which streets get paved and when.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful. And we're going to work progressively to continue to keep that information updated, both socially, in person, online, and however else we can get that information out. We'll also more than likely have that at our tabling events when the farmer's market returns, because that becomes one of the second most important things in the farmer's market. So you're either there to buy something or find out when your road's going to get patched or paved. So we know we're a hot commodity, but we want to make sure that we have whoever's working those tables armed with that information. Thank you. Please continue. I appreciate you taking that off ramp.
No problem. Okay, so I think this is where I was. Elevated water storage, you do have your ongoing tank maintenance contracts, so your tanks are in good condition and they continue with routine maintenance. The groundwater storage tank at Pine Street is, really small, short pump cycle times. It's not going to be a long-term solution, even though it's been here a long term and it's served you well, but its days are over with. Your distribution systems, you still have many older valves. Some of them are probably inoperable. There are issues with some of your older fire hydrants being able to find replacement parts. Obviously, cast iron pipe and galvanized pipe is prone to leakage, and that's why it's important to continue to look for opportunities to be able to replace that with newer materials. I'm not going to go through all those numbers again, but these are the residual numbers after this USDA project is completed. These are the footages of those types of materials that are still left in the ground. And then, of course, as we've talked about before, insufficient flow and pressure for the desired fire flow demands. Okay, recommendations for future water supply, treatment, and distribution. Secure a future water treatment plant site. So the town has a site that, as far as I know, it's intended to be used for a water treatment plant site. I'm going to show you another slide on that in just a minute, just so you're fully aware of everything that we feel like you should be. But yes, I mean, planning for a site for a new water treatment plant is pretty critical. Updating the comprehensive water study. So again, the comprehensive water study was done back in 2005. Clearly, there's been a lot of changes since then. The major things that really need to be addressed are updating population and demand projections. We certainly think it would be prudent to update your hydraulic model of the system. Lord knows there have been so many changes to the town since that hydraulic model was developed those many years ago. We need to be able to evaluate and recommend a water treatment plant capacity, as well as the associated number of raw water wells required, at 650 gallons per minute capacity. And then ultimately also evaluate and recommend the transmission, distribution, storage, and fire flow improvements that would be required throughout your system also. The last bullet there, again, we think it would be prudent and important when and if the town is able to try to secure those test well sites. You already have an investment out there that you've made that you don't own, and it would be nice if there was a way that you could own those sites moving forward. And they could be your future production well sites, and certainly a part of your future water supply. And when I say that, obviously as the town continues to develop, there's limitations on, or there are requirements for these well sites, right? They have to be a certain size. We have to have a certain radius around the wells. The type of operations that are adjacent to them, those things are important relative to gaining approval from public water supply section to use a piece of ground for a production well. So that's why these are important. Okay, this is actually what I call the Gibbs property. Y'all may have a better name for it, but this came from that land and site evaluation report. And this, we were tasked with, evaluating this piece of property. I'm going from memory. I think it was around 15, 16 acres maybe, or something like that. And we were tasked to see if it would be a suitable site for the development of a water treatment plant site, which is it's on the west end, the left-hand end of the property. What you see kind of in the middle of the property is a new public works facility. And then what you see up in the front of the property against Highway 70 is a new town hall facility. And so the report did indicate that the site was suitable for these purposes. And there is a small amount of wetlands on the site, but we've already gained permission that other than the wetlands in the ditches, we can fill the little bit of wetlands that's there in that red dashed line near the public works facility there. One thing that's really important about this site is that at least the rear portion of this site can be drained to the big ditch that's against I think it's against the Mercer property. I don't know if it's against, maybe it's developed back there now, but to the left, there's a big ditch there. And that ditch drains, all the way past the school and down past the shopping center and ultimately into Town Creek, which is a SC water. And that's important from a development standpoint because it's less expensive to be able to design and grade and provide the stormwater site improvements and treatability improvements if you're draining to an SC water than it would be trying to drain a site to an SA high-quality water. So, I mean, this is what we believe would be a good site. The rear portion of this property would be a good site to put a water treatment plant on if the town sees fit to doing that at some point in time in the future. If you were to go to some other sites, like an example would have been the Penner's Point property, that drained to the SA high-quality waters of Turner Creek, and it made it more expensive to develop that site, in addition to there was some other issues for that site as well. But nevertheless, this was, we were asked at the last Utility Rate Committee meeting to bring a map of parcels that are owned by the town of Beaufort, and that's what you see here. Those, all of those magenta-looking outlines, those polygons, they're all properties that are owned by the town of Beaufort. And I wish I had a pointer, but you can see what I'm calling the Gibbs property. You can see those two parallel long linear tracks up there just to the north of Campton Road. That's the area that, you know, currently is proposed for a water treatment plant. At least that was the last thought, that that's where the water treatment plant site would go.
Mr. Churchill, we've got a question for
I
you.
have a
before-
quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
And maybe I'm not understanding, but, so we have 2 water treatment plants already.
Yes.
But we need a place for a new water treatment plant. Is the reason why we can't use the properties we already have, the wells are dry? Why can't we just upgrade the locations that we have?
Well, they're really not large enough for a new water treatment plant. If you're gonna put one water treatment plant to replace those 2, we would definitely advise that you go to a new piece of ground. You also have to keep those plants operational while you're building your new plant, so you can't really take your plants down to build a new plant. You gotta keep making water for your customers while you're building the new plant. So no, it's always been the concept that we would find a new piece of ground that's larger. You know, we would say, we would probably like to look for about 5 acres. We can get by with a little bit less than that, but long and short, it's gonna have to be on a brand new piece of ground somewhere.
And it would be better to have one bigger plant than 2 smaller plants?
Oh, by all means. I mean, you're just doubling up your operational cost and your maintenance and things of that nature. You would much rather have just a single water treatment plant to have to take care of. Was there another question?
Just a similar question on the existing property.
Yes.
What would prohibit us from drilling new wells at the existing sites where the wells currently exist?
Well, you already have 2 wells at your existing site. Wells 2 and 3. Well 2 is on the Pine Street Water Treatment Plant site. Well 3 is on the Glenda Drive Water Treatment Plant site.
And no additional room there to be able to drill if we wanted to drill further there to put the wells there. We just need new property for that.
Yeah, you need new property. And, you know, those wells, if the wells had been constructed with the idea that in the future they needed to be larger,
Right.
you know, they would have been installed with larger diameter casings, right? But these casings are probably 10-inch on those exist. Does that sound about right, Donovan? Yeah, I mean, the new wells, like for the Glenda remote well and the Sycamore, which is the Pine Street remote well, we put 12-inch casings in there because the idea was, even though today we only needed to get 350 gallons per minute from them to the existing water treatment plants, in the future, you can replace the pumps, replace the starter and the controls, and drop in bigger pumps, and you can use the same well to get 650 gallons per minute. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we really can't go back and retrofit those old wells. I'm not gonna say you couldn't get some benefit from them. I mean, you could potentially use them as a well feeding a new water treatment plant, but you're not gonna get the same volume of water as you're gonna get with the new wells that we want to install.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's a follow-up clarifier on that, if that's okay. So I think maybe the question is, based on the geographical space, the acreage of your site, if it's an issue about age, pipe casing, material cost, there are rules for how close you can drill your new wells to pre-existing wells. So we
That's
want to
correct.
talk about that. And then if you had physical spacing on the parcel that you owned, and you could drill deep enough to get the quality of water and the rate flow that you needed, you can do that. It just depends on the size of those sites. So I think in our inventory, we would want to identify what our minimum needs are, what our operational costs would be, because if you can drill, and I'm assuming Commissioner Matthews is thinking as I am, if you can drill near, then your infrastructure to tie in is a lesser cost. And you also don't have to acquire new property. So can you speak to that for a bit about the spatial requirements or the minimum standards about how far away we need to be when re-drilling, and/or if there's any opportunities for us to recycle some of our current land sites to either put new casings into new wells? I think that's a better.
I mean, the state's requirement, public water supply's requirement for a well is that you control a 100-foot radius around that well. We typically try to get our clients to go just a little bit bigger than that, because as you were sort of alluding to there, you know, if over a period of years you have a well that just kind of craps out on you, if you still have a good well site and the aquifer's still good, you could move over 10 feet and drill another well on that same piece of ground and continue to use that site. So if you only control 100 foot, then you can't move over 10 feet without securing another 10 feet of property that you own or control. So by and large, the public water supply doesn't want to approve well sites where you have developed items, you know, whether it be a parking lot. I mean, that parking lot cannot be within that 100-foot radius. They're probably not even going to be interested in a water treatment plant being in that 100-foot radius moving forward. The wells that you have right now they're kind of grandfathered in, so to speak. But moving forward, they're going to want you to have a new well on a dedicated well site that is protected, you know, source water protection. They want to make sure that nothing is going to get down in that well, in the casing or in that aquifer that could contaminate it, because obviously that's the water that's supplying your drinking water. So we haven't asked Public Water Supply about those two existing water treatment plant sites for a well, frankly, because I don't think they'll approve it. We can ask, but I don't think they will.
Can you also speak to the quality of the aquifer that's there?
Yeah.
And how many years we expect that to be operational or viable?
Yeah.
And is that the same aquifer that we were looking at for the Gibbs property?
Yeah, the aquifer that we would be drilling, that we drilled the test wells in and that new production wells would be installed in is the same aquifer that you're in currently for your existing wells. It's the Castlehane aquifer. And, you know, the Castlehane aquifer is gonna be hard, right? It's a limestone aquifer. There's gonna be maybe a little bit of iron and manganese in it, not a whole lot down in this area, but there will be some. The treatment process that you have in place currently is a zeolite softening process, and it is perfectly capable of being able to soften that hard water to a desirable level. But looking forward, you always have to be concerned about saltwater migration or saltwater, migrating into a freshwater aquifer. And so part of the reason for, two or three reasons for going with nano filtration in lieu of softening, zeolite softening, and that is, number one, because if by chance there was saltwater migration into the aquifer in the future, a membrane plant, a nanofiltration plant, is kind of already set up where you could switch it out, so to speak, to a reverse osmosis water treatment plant, which is another type of membrane plant. Reverse osmosis obviously would be to remove the salt from the raw water. Nanofiltration is making use of fresh water, because that water is fresh currently. I can't put a timeline on will it or when might it turn salty. I don't know how to answer that question. But part of the reason for going nano was kind of, you're investing in a system that would be easier to change in the future, much less expensive to change than if you had a zeolite softening plant and your raw water went salty and you had to switch to RO, then you're kind of like starting over again, you know? Another thing was the organics. The raw water, the Castle Hang raw water does have a lot of organics in it. And the nanofiltration membranes will remove those organics. With the organics, you know, they can be precursors when you add chlorine to organic water that has organics in it. It can create disinfection byproducts, carcinogenic, potentially carcinogenic type products. The town, Jonathan, tell me if I'm off base here, but I think the town probably stays in compliance with their disinfection byproducts by probably flushing. Because and when you flush, you're kind of wasting water, right? You're just flushing out finished water that you paid to treat, paid to pump it, paid to transport it, paid to treat it, and now you're just flushing it out on the ground. On the other hand, you know, you could consider switching over to chloramines as your disinfectant, your residual disinfectant. That's chlorine followed by ammonia is just a different form of disinfection. But a lot of municipalities choose not to go that route. It is a little more complicated to operate, and so a lot of municipalities say, you know, they want to stick with chlorine and they'll flush to make sure they stay within their limits on disinfection byproducts. But if you go nanofiltration in the future, you won't have that concern because you will remove those organic precursors. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did I answer everything that I was supposed to?
Does the
I don't know,
nano,
you've got a few more slides, so I figure we'll have a few more questions.
does nanofiltration also address like microplastics as well on that level?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it'll remove like PFAS and you know, it's really the highest level. These membrane treatment plants are the highest level of treatment that's out there. Okay, Matt, was there anything we need to talk about on this slide here? Okay, let's move forward then. I talked about this really already, but the point of this was just kind of to point out to you that most of the waters around the town are SA high quality waters, and that water, the Gibbs property that's owned by the town of Beaufort now, that we're suggesting you could put a new water treatment plant on, it would drain over to Town Creek, which is a SC water, which is advantageous to your development cost. Okay, and then these are actually, I know it's hard to see this, but these were all the different test well sites that we drilled back in 2008 or so. So there's test well 00, which is the Glenda remote well site, all the way to test well 06. So there's a total of 7 of those sites. And again, at some juncture, if the town is able to, it would be really nice to try to see if you could secure those properties. Recommendations for future water supply and treatment distribution continued. Will update and or complete the test well study. So Public Water Supply has told us that those wells, those test wells, have been sitting out there so long that, number one, we would have to get them to revisit the sites and approve them as well sites again. And we would have to hire a well driller to come in and flush the wells and re-sample the wells to run all that battery of tests again to ensure that the water quality is acceptable for treatment purposes. So again, that's a critical part of a new water treatment plant. I think I've told most all of my clients over the years, you know, you don't really have a water treatment plant project until, number one, you know you've got the raw water supply. Number two, that you can prove that it's treatable, which is the next bullet, conduct a nanofiltration pilot plant study. And thirdly, that you can obtain an NPDES discharge permit. I mean, you've got to have those 3 things to have a project. You don't have a project until you get those 3 things in place. So those first 3 bullets: complete the test well study or update the test well study, conduct the nanofiltration pilot plant study, which we would probably suggest doing that right over at the Glenda well site. You know, that would be a fine site to do it at. complete the NPDES engineering alternatives analysis, complete the core mix dilution modeling as well as the environmental assessment. And then with all of that information, then we can submit an NPDES discharge permit application to see if we can get a permit. Recommendations for existing wells, just well number 2, I don't know if this has been done or not, Donovan, but, replace the starter with a soft start, solid state starter. Again, if this is something that it only has to last a few more years, you probably don't want to put the money into it. But if it was going to last many, many, many more years, then it's probably something that would be wise to do. And then wells number 2 and 3, the oldest wells, just continue to monitor them for any kind of diminishing flows, just to see if the wells are beginning to fail. Recommendations for your existing water treatment plants, just continue to monitor the performance of high service pump number 1, perform, and I don't know if this has been done or not, Donovan, perform interior inspection of the softener vessels per the manufacturer's recommendations. I don't know if that's been done in the last few years or not. Monitor the aged and rusting electrical gear. And then, this is kind of the big picture thing, consider spending money on existing current operation and maintenance costs versus investing in a new water supply, treatment, and distribution facility. So that's kind of the big question, so to speak. For your storage, just continue to maintain prescribed maintenance per the contract. Distribution, update your GIS water database. Use it as a tool to increase O&M efficiency and effectiveness. Replace older hydrants when you have the opportunity, replace inoperable valves, and replace older piping. Okay, actions for consideration. Obviously, no action. What are the pros of the no action? It reduces your short-term cost. It minimizes any short-term impacts to your water rates. And, your finished water quality does meet primary and secondary drinking water standards. And you do have reasonable buffers in place against catastrophic failure. What are the cons? The operation maintenance expenditures are on an outdated system. The long-term costs to design and construct new facilities continues to increase. And of course, a nanofiltration plant will produce a superior drinking water quality than that you have currently. Other actions for consideration, you could begin considering to plan for a new water treatment plant. So what are the pros of that? You could begin to phase in some of the initial planning and design costs to dovetail with your debt service capability. So I don't know the specifics, but I know I've heard Matt say that in a few years, you will have some existing debt service that starts to roll off. So, designing, permitting, and constructing and flipping the switch doesn't happen in a year. It takes, maybe 5 years from the time we start this process until you can hope to have potable drinking water from that new plant. So depending on timing, you could begin some of these preliminary planning activities that are going to be required to determine if you really even have a water treatment plant project. Also, secure the future water supply against development activities. So for those existing well sites or the fact that development continues to occur anyway, you need to protect your future water supply. And cons, what are the cons? Well, it costs money to do these things. I mean, there's upfront costs associated with the planning, design, and land acquisition. There it is.
I would just like to add to that point, Peter, back to the question about site size.
Now, Stephen, I know you may not need a microphone. You're at the volume that my TV is, which I think is great, but.
So just to add to Greg's last point there, to go back to site selection, determining what size site you need, you want to design a water treatment plant. So if you're designing a 2 MGD water treatment plant today, to be able to expand it to a 4 MGD plant, that feeds into your site selection, and is it feasible to reuse an existing site? So it's just something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all have asked some really good questions along the way. Can you think of some others? I know I took plenty of your time. I apologize. Elizabeth gave me 30 minutes. How much did I use?
Almost 2 hours.
Greg,
An hour and 30 minutes?
Greg, you used all of it. We're good.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. Okay,
Shot clock from him next time.
okay. Any other questions?
It's all good information, Greg, that's all
I
that's
hope it's
important.
helpful.
Yes,
Yep.
because we'll have some long-term
I
decisions
know you
in
need
which we'll
some
need
water
to
about
make.
now.
We can sell them some.
As soon as that nano filter gets in.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
very
you
good.
so
Thank you,
much.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now we're gonna, once we get a second or two, we're gonna move on to Beaufort Town Docks Financial Report. That's through January and February of 2026. We have Miss Lori Meehan with F3. Welcome back, Lori. Always exciting to see you.
Good evening, everybody. I will talk at double speed, how's that? Do I have the clicker?
Took your time and clipper.
So I love this picture. You'll probably see it every time I talk to you. And that is what we intend the docks to look like for Big Rock. We have 2 spots left that have not yet been sold and paid for. They're both 17-foot beam slips, so we need 2 skinny boats to sign up, and we will be full. So our March occupancy numbers are here. This is not necessarily in your packet, but just where I wanted to start. We'll be transitioning from March into April, where we will not be looking at monthly income, but we'll be looking at transient income. So this is our last month of winter boaters. We did move from slips to linear feet so that you could see those numbers. Overall, we're at 56.38% in terms of occupancy, and if you look at each of our areas, we're above 30% in each of those. Questions about our occupancy for March? Okay, so April, we would expect our northern migration to begin and that our winter boaters would depart, and we would start to see those moving north. I will tell you that based on the fuel prices right now, we probably will see that delay some. Probably 4 or 5 years ago when we had a similar event this time of year, we saw folks delaying their travels north. So that may be something that we encounter in April. We may have folks that aren't quite ready to leave, and we may have folks that aren't quite ready to pass through. But we will keep you updated on our progress in terms of our occupancy.
What is the price of diesel? Is it 5 now?
Well, it depends on what you read and where you look. So I've looked at Waterway Guide and I've called places that have them posted. 489.9 was what Homer Smith was posted at in Waterway Guide, updated 4 days ago. When I called in person, the price was different. But I'm going to find out because I'm going to get a pump out tomorrow. My boat's getting hauled out. I'm going to find out exactly what the fuel is in person. But it varies depending on when they purchase their fuel. Fuel that we had delivered, we would be selling in the $5.50 range.
Okay.
All right, so these are the financials, and this is a snapshot of what you have in your packet with many, many, many pages. But this is just kind of the high level overview for February. It looks at what our actuals are, what we were budgeted for in terms of sales, and then expenses. And then you can see where we stand in terms of variance. So overall, we've missed our budget numbers between January and February by about $3,000 total. And when you look at, though, the expenses, we have underspent in relation to that, mostly in staffing and not being fully staffed because it wasn't necessary just yet. And so we see that we are beating our budget in terms of what we projected. So you have in front of you lots of pages of the full financials for January and February. And I am happy to take questions, talk through any concerns that you may have, But typically, when we're giving our monthly report, this is our snapshot. Then we give you the full financials to ask questions. If I don't have the answer and it's something that an accounting person needs to answer, I will write that question down and make sure the full board gets a response. But that is my presentation.
So we're yet to include the big rock funds that, where people have advanced.
In terms of
Payment.
recognizing them in in the financials, it's deferred revenue. And so you will see the deferred revenue show up in June. We have about 198,000 in deferred revenue for June. So it's in the bank, but it's not in your financials, and it won't be there until June.
So you're saying your presentation is over?
It is, unless you have other questions for me.
Is there 40 more slides?
Just hold on. Yeah, I don't think, yeah.
I know you got a lot of pages, and there's a lot of detail in those pages, and I'm happy to explain anything that you might have questions about, but that's basically our overview. We're still tracking. We're building out our budget for the next fiscal year. I'll be back next month to talk with you about that. We project to be very cash positive, so we're excited about the future.
Okay,
Happy to be doing it with you.
On page 48, is it 48? Yeah, I think it's 48. I saw here on the line item, membership dues.
So there are $65.50, $83 across the board. I don't know exactly what that is, but I can find out for you.
Thank you. Okay. Just one, can we, Matt, get, for F3, can we get hard copies for us to review before we come to the meeting?
Hard copies.
I'll actually say I don't need a hard copy.
Yeah, so,
I like,
yeah, anytime you need a hard copy, just let us know.
okay, all right. Well, that would be anytime.
Gladly.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. I think.
Okay, Dexter.
Last time we approved the roughly 68,000 on the commercial docks.
Yes.
Doing the repairs for those, and I know I had asked a question about potential return on investment
Correct.
by that, and I thought maybe you were going to present something on that. Do you have any information on that you can share?
I don't have that with me tonight, but we can have our accounting team. They've done a cash analysis, and they have that waiting on the budget for next year to be, those numbers to be plugged in. So I have what I think it's going to be, but I need you to approve that budget, and then I can give you the cash analysis on the return on investment, because it's going to be plug and play with those numbers.
Right.
So if I suggest that we charge $20 a foot beginning next year, and you say, nope, we're only going to charge 15, then that's going to change the equation.
Okay, so during the budget process, you'll present that.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. And just probably maybe a point more so than a question on this. Everything you're presenting in your budget, and Matt and I discussed this a little bit, it's totally separate from the enterprise fund that is the town's enterprise fund and the money that sits there. And I think it's an important point that there's, close to 368,000 sitting in the enterprise fund currently. Just a statement so the
Okay.
public would hear it. Thank you.
Sure.
So I'll reclassify or reclarify that. So the town had established an enterprise fund, Fund 14, correct, Christie? We established that effective the 1st of January 2026 because we needed to have a location for any of the funds that were going to be recollected or redistributed back to the town of Beaufort to be adequately deposited. There was also a desire of the previous board prior to this new composition to front-load that area, so we had funds in a fund reserve account that were transferred into Fund 14 or the Enterprise Fund for specifically things like, and we had called it out early, the payment of the first installation of diesel fuel that would go into the tank, because you couldn't have cash on hand, you hadn't sold it yet. So the town was going to be prepared to front load that. We actually, in fact, signed those invoices today to pay for the fuel that went in last week. So we had almost $400,000 into that account. We used, if I'm not mistaken, $20,000 of that for our pump out to be purchased. And then we also used funds for
Insurance.
the initial insurance payment. Thank you. And so once we get it going, it's basically like getting a train rolling. You're going to get the momentum on the track. And then as cash comes in, it goes into the Truist Bank account, which is held for F3 has their own account. And then at the conclusion of the year, if there is proceeds, those proceeds would then come back to the town. It's very similar to our relationship with Pivot Parking as to how they progress throughout the year and then collections come back to the town. Is that correct, Christy? Is that a good? Yes, thank you. Does that help everyone? So there is a town's fund, but the day-to-day activities, bills coming out, cash coming in, goes to the F3 account, which we can see, but we don't touch. And then at the conclusion of each fiscal year, so this would be through June 30th, 2026, which would be the balance of FY26. And so as we talk about the budget process, we're forecasting what the potential transient rates may be, what the potential for sale of diesel fuel will be, and then we'll be able to calculate that, bring that information back as a joint group between F3 and town staff to say, here's what we believe is your best foot forward beginning July 1st. And then the town board has the full control to either accept it, increase, decrease, or make any adjustment.
And Matt, moving forward, the diesel bills will be paid through, by the F3 account?
Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Thank you.
So, going back to the diesel prices, so are you forecasting a downsizer in terms of people that normally would travel, but with the diesel?
It's just the
being-
timing. So they're south and they need to come north, mostly related to insurance. So if their insurance policy tells them that they can't be in the state of Florida beginning June the 1st, then they have to come north. And that's typically where you see the north and south migration. It happens during those times. So where folks see good weather and think, I'm going to get back to my cheaper slip and out of West Palm, maybe they sit there a little bit longer waiting for those diesel prices to come down. Once they either see that either this is going to be the stable price and this is the pain point that we're going to be in for a while, then they move north, or they wait for the pricing to change. But in any respect, if it's not April, it'll be May. It's going to happen. It may just not happen to the numbers that we have projected for April. We may see May heavier than anticipated.
And can I just clarify, so the boats have to move north by June 1st because many of their insurance companies say they can't be farther south due to hurricanes, right?
Correct. Hurricane season causes them to be out of hurricane-prone areas.
So they do have to come by June 1st. They just might not come as, in April. They might come in May instead.
Right.
So they leave one hotbed to come to another hotbed. But we're a hurricane corridor
Well, I mean, they're stopping here on their way further north.
on the way further
Right.
north.
Right.
Okay, any further questions for Lori? Thank you, Lori, appreciate
Okay.
your time.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move on to items for discussion and consideration. The first one is parking,
Mayor?
pivot parking.
I'm sorry. And I know we did a agenda approval, but at the last minute, I saw something that our town manager sent out that I would maybe like to.
Can you talk to him
Well,
about
be
that?
public
Wait a minute.
about it? No, I
Oh,
want
wait.
public about it.
I'm sorry, what is it that you're trying to do? You want to add something to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
We've already approved it,
Yeah, I know.
so.
Can we go just for, it's no more than,
I tell you what,
just information purpose?
Let me get through these three items and we'll revisit that. Can
Thank
we do
you.
that?
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
So now we're going to move on to pivot parking, the contract amendment. And we've got Elizabeth and Ari. to discuss that.
Thank you, Mayor. This is fairly straightforward. It's just an amendment to the current pivot parking contract to reflect the dates that the board voted on from May 1st to October 1st. It's not changing any other terms in the contract. It's just amending those dates. And you'll see it references the second amendment because the first amendment was changing dates as well the last time. So we've shifted from the May 5th to the October 31st to the May 1st to the October 1st.
Okay. Anything to add? Any questions? So we just need a motion to approve this amendment
Yes,
to the pivot parking contract.
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion to approve the pivot parking contract amendment as presented.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the commercial dock railing design and concept. We have Mr. Mark Eek and Matt Zapp to tackle
Mark Eeks,
that.
come on down, buddy.
Come on down, the lucky winner and contestant. I wish I had some game show music for you.
Price is right.
Well, not always, not always.
No. We can tag team this if you want, I know.
Yes, sir. Rock and roll.
Okay. Would you like me to begin or would you?
But you.
So Mark has been tremendous, and I want to publicly thank him and his entire team for the work that they're doing in cooperation with Lori, with Bob Cole, and everyone from F3. So we are in the process of doing a lot of work, and some of that has fallen into the arena or area of responsibility of Public Works. So Mark, on behalf of everyone, thank you for what you're doing. The next phase in our process here was to discuss the importance of our cleanup in and around the commercial dock area. And so at our last meeting, we clearly discussed the importance of improving the safety of that commercial dock area, and that process is beginning. So Mark helped us secure some pricing. I believe Mark and Lori are working with the vendor to do that. While we're looking at that whole commercial dock area, there's 150 foot of frontage of fencing or railing, if you will. Railing is an interchangeable term here, that runs the capacity in front of the commercial zone. We understand that some of that is dilapidated, and actually all of it is probably prone for replacement. In that cleanup process is also the chance to enhance the visibility, the aesthetic appeal, also the commercial signage placement of information and the health, life, safety improvements of that area, since we have so many visitors and so many people traversing that area, making their way to the docks. So as we improve the docks, we're also looking at improving this railing system. Now, Mark, who would like a gold star for this lately, has not only brought us images, he physically constructed, literally constructed examples, and they have this currently on display at Public Works. So I'll let Mark speak to all the labor and work that they've done. What we tried to do was identify what would be period-sensitive, maintenance improvements and/or opportunities, visually appealing, and we also understand that whatever decision is made tonight would need to go to the HPC, and Kyle has helped us get prepared to be on their agenda at the beginning portion of April. So step one is really a description of what we have as options, and then step two, if the board makes a selection, we'll carry that selection forward, seek approval from the HPC, and if that occurs, then we can begin construction. And this is something that we would tackle in-house with Public Works. So Mark, would you like to explain what you've constructed and the rationale for it?
Yes, sir. As you see this first picture, that's just a standard 6-inch wooden post, be uprighted with 3 aluminum 1.5-inch handrails. That would probably be our best option for maintenance. These posts here are painted, kind of go along with our scheme at Public Works, but we would prefer it to be wood post to match the rest of the railing that's existing down there, and also for maintenance. There's one more with right there. This one is a same design basically, but a flat rail on the top, and you can put a gusset type board underneath instead of the third aluminum railing. We just had to, we'd put it this way just to see it initially. This is a 2x6 treated board on the top, and the potential gusset or the pipe is to keep it from bowing over time. Again, it's still painted white, but we would prefer the wood. And the aluminum rails, it's just, again, it's for maintenance, for ease of maintenance. That was option 2. Option 3 is just a standard 2x6 vertical railing with a flat board on top, or a flat 2x6 on the top. Again, I had requests for a tilted board on top. Personally, just preference of flat board. Again, with a 6-inch vertical post. And all the posts you can see, some of them are chamfered on the edges, some of them are flat. Some of them have little decorative post caps. We don't prefer the post caps, we're just giving you options to look at. And we needed a new fence at Public Works anyway. So. But the fourth option was just a standard split rail fence. Basically, it is what we have currently at RJ Park that they put the mural on. On average, the option 1 is around, I think that one's around $7,500 to $8,000 for the hardware, the brackets, everything needed to do 150 linear feet, just material. If you went to option 2, you're approximately $6,500 to $7,000. This one, and that, again, that top board can be slanted or flat. There's not a picture of that, is it? Okay. If you go by there, there is one that's constructed. The option 3 is also around $6,500 to $7,000. And then when you go to option 4, which is just kind of standard and basic, you look at around $4,000 for 150 linear feet.
So while you're beginning the conversations to discuss it, the entire railing system at the docks is natural wood in appearance. And so if we were to tackle something, and if you added paint to it, it's going to be exasperated by the rest of the maintenance on the full 1,000 foot that we're dealing with. So what we're going to propose is whichever solution you choose, if you go with wood, either wood and metal combined or wood solely, that we would keep it natural. And Mark, if you'll speak to the importance of cleaning and what you're doing with pressure washing on natural surfaces.
Basically, the natural surfaces, you can go and pressure wash it biannually, whatever you needed, based on the mildew wear and the fading and sun. On painting, it's going to be an every year option down there, have to. And that it would, consume a lot of staff time when we have just a few other things going on. The aluminum handrails are great. You can take some chemical, wipe them down every year. Periodically, it takes all of 30, 40 minutes for the whole railing system, and you're done. All the brackets that the 6x6s will mount to the top of the existing seawall with, they're going to be a galvanized material, and it'll be about a 6-inch vertical visual bracket on the bottom of every post, and they'll kind of be alternating directions of how they turn for stability. So we just thought it would kind of look good with the aluminum in there.
The other pieces that we want to add before you begin to debate or discuss how you would like to attack it, there are options to put solar-powered caps on those railings to provide some ambient nighttime lighting. There's also an option that if Mark has brought forward, if we go through the inspections department and seek the proper permits, we could potentially place 2 outlets. We would split the 75 or the 150 foot, 75 and 75 roughly. This is the other key that's important is on the seawall, there is some busted concrete that Mark's either going to fix or use that as an opening. He's trying to determine the best spot to place the opening. That opening would then be made ADA compliant, again inspected by the planning department, to make sure that the transition from the sidewalk across the seawall onto the deck surface is permissible with ADA compliance. So there's multiple improvements that we can improve while we make this setup. But the importance of what Mark was indicated, if you went with the wooden style railing, whether you had a gusseted support underneath it or the vertical board that is pictured in the one directly to the right here, you could put the rope lighting neatly tucked behind there and make that seaside, and you could have some really gorgeous down lighting. So we're open to any solution that the board would like us to take forward to HPC. But Kyle, I didn't hated to ask, we didn't mention it about lighting. I'm not sure that's something that, okay,
got a thumbs up.
that they may find favorable. So
Two thumbs up.
there's a lot of improvements here, and what we want to do is basically label it the Beaufort way. We want to give it the care it deserves. We want to build it with integrity and class, and we want to make sure whatever improvements that we make are long-standing and would be well-received. And so that's the foundation. We only have 10 more versions of the fence around the back of the building you can go through if you really, really want to. But I think Mark and his team have really tried to do a good job of giving you true visual representations. And I know we had a beta test team that were physically testing it over the course of the weekend, and we'll probably get some feedback on that, which is really helpful as well. So that's our presentation. Is there anything we missed, Mark, that you want to share?
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Well,
ask a
thanks.
quick
Yes.
clarifying question, Matt?
Sure.
So the railing, the location that we're talking about where this will be installed is in front of the commercial operators, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. From the lookout all the way down to the last kiosk is 150 feet.
Okay.
There's currently an opening on the east end, there's currently an opening on the west end. What we're proposing is we maintain the opening on the west end and move the new opening to the central portion so that you can make the ADA compliant, so you'd be able to come into the center and turn right and go 75-ish feet, turn left and go 75-ish feet. So it's a safety entrance and exit. It's the 150-foot directly in front of the commercial space.
So it's directly in front of the commercial docks, but will it also be placed behind the commercial docks? Do you know? Okay.
Currently today, there is the seawall that runs east and west, and this would be constructed on that. And then when the new improvements are being made of the commercial docks, the old railing system that is haphazardly and/or cantilevered or falling would be removed and taken out. There's one section that has a large electrical panel, and Mark is going to repair that, pull the permitting, and stabilize that as well. So this is a safety purpose as well as an aesthetic purpose.
So I think what I'm trying to understand is, so this railing will only go for right now in front of the commercial operators, but eventually, like, we're gonna replace the railings, I don't know how soon, along all of the boardwalk one day?
So we would start with the section in front of the commercial dock, and I believe that whatever you establish here would be replicatable as you make your way around the dock. Those other dock retaining areas, improvements to the dock are gonna be based on our scheduled and phased approach for repairs, because I'd like to point out for the audience and for the board that the next two major obstacles or hurdles would be the fuel distribution line, as well as all the electrical upgrades are necessary. So we're also simultaneously applying for the hazard mitigation grant program's design contract or design grant. Then that would lead down the path of a $3 million repair, but you don't want to go spend money today. We would be making minor repairs, if I'm not mistaken, to the existing railing system. And then what we would do is, when the timing is right in the phased approach, you would either be repairing the 18-inch cap on the seawall, which would then necessitate 100% new piping, 100% new infrastructure. To get to that, you'd have to tear up the actual boardwalk, which would mean replacement of the boardwalk. So there's a sequential pattern for improvements. But today, the only section that we can do without negatively impacting the balance is that 150-foot run. And the second reason is to make sure we're gaining ADA compliance, and now having the instead of having the fixed finger piers, we're going to have the floating and adjustable, which is going to increase safety for all those boarding and disembarking from the commercial rentals.
So even though we're not choosing the design for all of the boardwalk today, would we anticipate that whatever we choose today is likely what we're going to continue down the boardwalk whenever that is in the future?
That's potential, and/or you put out a new product and you say, well, we ran that for 2 or 3 years and that wasn't what we want. At least this 150-foot section is a much smaller beta run.
Okay.
And so the one thing I have learned in my years of governmental experience is we are flexible and can pivot. And I will not tell you that whatever you decide today you have to stick with, but I do realize that this is why this is such an important conversation.
Thank you, Matt. I have other comments about the design itself, but that was my kind of clarifying question, if others want to go first about the design.
Thanks, Mark and Matt, for the presentation. Two things. I think both Women Club, might have some rejection in terms of a tilted board because of what they flower plants like to lay, how they lay flat. So I think you might get some pushback on that. The second is, I like the second one with the galvanized pipes because the second one versus the last one of the galvanized pipe, which has a radius and where it's much wider. This one would probably prevent some children that's running on the deck with their mom from falling off of the parent may be paying attention or not, and the child is sticking their head through the pipes. But I think this one is a much narrower one than the last one with the galvanized, where the opening is much wider. If you consider that.
Kyle could probably correct me on this, but the standard or the ruling for code is it can't be more than 21 inches between the railing. Is that?
With a spear of 17-inch spear.
Okay. And the split rail 3, the first option, was 10 inches apart. And the bottom, yes, sir, those are from top of rail to top of the next rail is 10 inches. And then on the bottom of this, if you can recall, Mr. Zapp said there's going to be a 4 or 5 inch seawall lip on the bottom because the sidewalk surface is what we're building the height to based on the elevation of what is required at 42 inches.
So what would be, so right now there's a very large gap from the third railing to the ground. When it's installed, what would that gap, how big would that gap be?
I'm not exactly sure on this one. We built these at 36 just because that's what we were doing in our yard as a demonstration. The code requires 42. If we need to space it out to 11 and 11, and then we have the 4-inch lip on the bottom already there from the natural lip for the seawall. Because again, we're going from the sidewalk surface 42 inches high, not from the top of the wall.
So I think, so we did take a field trip down there this weekend with my son, who's 3, and I made him try to go through those railings, and he wasn't very pleased with me because they are really tight, and he got through the railing, but it really hurt his head, and he was like, I do not like this. So those railings, a kid can get through, but it's hard. And if the parent is watching them, it would really slow the kid down. They wouldn't be able to get to the other side, whether it's onto the dock or into the water. But what my concern is, they can go right under the bottom and get right into the water. So I guess I just don't understand, is that what it would look like when it was installed? Would you put a 4th railing, or what, is that just the gap that would be there?
That would be your choice. Code just states the 21 difference between them. So we would stick to that. If y'all chose to add another rail, it would significantly increase the price. For 150 foot it's roughly $295 per stick, and one stick would cover one section right now at 7 foot on center. So you'd have to, I'd have to figure all that up, but.
So would there be a more affordable way? So I think my big concern is if this gets installed on the boardwalk next to the water, it still allows a kid to fall in the water very easily, which is what we have right now. So it's, nothing different. But since we're upgrading it, I'd really like to see it be a lot safer and not have it so that a kid can easily fall into the water.
So can the last rail there be moved down and a much wider at the top? At least it still be able to prevent or slow down the child.
You can space the 3 rails, increase the spacing what we currently have right here. You could do that.
Okay.
But then we're getting to the same problem with the one to the left. So I had my son go through that one. It was no problem. In a second, he was through that one.
With aluminum or this?
That one, yeah,
Okay.
because the spacing was so big.
Right.
And that's to code, that spacing's to code?
Yes, ma'am.
So I can address one item first. It's approximately 2,100 foot on a 23-foot stick, divisible by 7 over that span. And so what we're looking at here is it's really about what design style that you like. All of them are going to be code compliant, but if I'm speaking appropriately to the code, they're not so much worried. The sphere is the importance of the travel through, but oftentimes it's for a person of mobility with a challenge that may be in a wheeled unit. so that the person can't get in a decline or get in a speeding position where the wheeling cart could stop at a sudden position and they fly out. So it's not necessarily for us to stop people that are walking, but it's more about people on the movement of a chair or somebody that has a walking assisted unit and may trip and fall. So those
Or
are
a
some.
stroller, possibly?
So some of those are all of it. So that's why you're seeing the distances with the spheres and the distances from rail to rail. But keep in mind, what's important about what we have here is you have a 4 to 5 inch vertical concrete cap adjacent to, it's very similar to your tables. Picture your table that's in front of you is the sidewalk. And your ribbon that's running across the top is almost identical to what the concrete cap is. And so the actual rail post will be on top of the seawall. So if this is the sidewalk, you automatically have a 4-inch stopper, and then on top of it comes the seawall. Then you would build on top of it.
Okay.
So in theory, we talked through this, that if it's 42 inches and you have a 4-inch concrete elevation, you would reduce the top, the materials on top by 4 inches. So it'd be 38 inches on top, plus or minus, with the wood materials.
So we have two options to take a look at. So you have that's not one of the options right there. So that's option number 2. Okay. And then I think the biggest difference between that and number 1 is that you have a top cap to that, a top railing. And then you would have to maybe decide on whether you wanted to add a cap to the post, whether it's a light. I mean, we're going for extra credit too, Mark. You can't be the
Mayor.
only one going for extra credit.
I have a comment.
Yes.
So, to me, obviously, the decision we make today is obviously going to play a big role in the future for the remainder of the docks that are there and the railings. I kind of have a hard time with the metal railing, only because I don't have historical perspective on a historical community that has metal railings like that in place. So, obviously I understand maintenance. Maintenance is totally a factor, and I appreciate that about you, Mark, and the amount of time that goes into maintenance for the wooden rails that are there. But we're in a historic community, and historic communities tend to have used wood, I would imagine, instead of, pipe-looking railing systems. And I think sticking with that, to me, is a lot more important for the aesthetics of the downtown. And so I'm much more apt to go with the wooden system, kind of almost replacing what we had there, and keeping it in the same form that we've had in the past. I'm not as big of a fan of even the downlighting or lighting. I think the downtown, the boardwalk, and even that part of the street has quite a bit of light already at night. I'm not sure if that would really make that big a deal as far as costs for the aesthetics of it. The street lights and the dock lights and so forth, I think are adequate, and adding that to it might affect, and I don't know, herons in town and on and so forth, the wildlife and so forth that are there. Adding even more ambient light to the downtown, I don't know if that's necessary. But I would rather stick with just wooden posts and keeping it in the tradition that people have had, that we've seen in the past. I do, like I said, I really understand the aesthetics, or I'm sorry, the maintenance costs and with maintaining that, and you guys replacing it. And I see what you do every year with replacing that, but it'd be quite a disruption to the community, I think. So
I am with you, John, 100%. 100%. I think it's a big thing about identity. I spent about an hour today looking at pictures from 1907 of the boardwalk, and 1913, 1930. Obviously, over time, we've had to, back in like 1912, it was just like a top cap and nothing else. But I think because of code changes over the years, we had to add those horizontal boards in there. But my primary concern is identity and historic appropriateness, even though I know it's a pain to maintain. I don't think we need the fancy top caps, although I think they're nice. And definitely agree on the light pollution aspect. We've already got tons of boats in there that bring their own lights as well and are shining them into the water. So I don't think we need the rope lighting. Yeah, that's kind of similar to what was here in the early 1900s, but obviously code has dictated us to add those horizontal boards in. But it had a top cap like that. Yeah, I like that.
So then we probably need to add option 3 in the mix, because that's not part of your options.
Oh, you have,
Okay.
it's whatever you decide. So if you
All right.
want wooden posts on the edge and then you want a top cap and 2 rails, we'll do whatever you want. We were just trying to provide you with choice and estimated cost of pricing. But you'll see in the image in front of you, there is a wooden 4x4 post with 2x4s that are theoretically on the deck surface. There's a galvanized pipe in between it that comes up and it's tubular and runs down. And then there was a constructed wooden structure street side. So you actually have 3 fences here that all would need to be cleaned up, eliminated, and one nice new piece of infrastructure established on that concrete wall that you see adjacent to the sidewalk. And so whatever decision that you make, if you want all wood, we'll build it on all wood. And if you want 2 rails, we'll do 2. If you want a 3rd rail, we'll do a 3rd. If you want the top rail to be vertical or up and down, we will make it that way. If you want it to be horizontal, and I think that what Commissioner Cooper identified is, along the other portions of the system, the town has already gone ahead and made 32 or 33 flower boxes for the garden club that are in a process for enhanced beautification for 2026. And so what we're just trying to do is clean this space up and standardize it, so it's really the 100% privilege of the board to establish what you want that look to be. So you see down on the eastern side, it's only a 2-rail system that leads to the end. So there's a lot going on here if you spend time down there. We've spent a tremendous amount of time trying to figure it out.
Is the 2 rail up to code? What are the measurements there in between the 2 rail?
On the ones here, I've got it wrote down in the office,
Yeah.
but I found it to be irrelevant because we're gonna remove it to put new.
Gotcha.
So I think, here, I'm not as concerned with the spacing because you're not gonna get a kid or a pet falling into the water here. I think it's more once we get around to the other side that, that's when I'm more concerned. But, I can go with the wood look. It is very traditional for Beaufort. I agree with that. And again, I don't know if the spacing is so much a concern, if we can kind of update it in the future when we do the rest of the boardwalk. And it looks similar enough that maybe it's fine.
And what about the height of it? Right here, you have 2 competing fences, one at a certain height.
Wooden rail on the west end where the sign is.
Okay.
Is at 48.5 inches tall. So it would be 6 inches lower than that, just to the top rail.
Okay.
And Matt, did you say the opening would be in the middle, the updated? we go
Yes,
back to?
ma'am. So halfway down there, roughly halfway, is some very deteriorated portions of that seawall. And we believe that Mark has the capacity to repair that, open it up, and make the entry level to the sidewalk. And Kyle, his team, Mark, and his team are all working to make that transition to the wooden surface flush and flat to make it ADA compliant. So our proposal is roughly halfway at 75 feet, and it'd be 75 of the fence to the left, 75 of the railing to the right, and we would maintain the opening on the west end as well.
So there would still only be 2 openings, but you would move one of them from the east
Right
to
now,
the
you have
west.
an opening on one end, you have an opening on the other, you have to walk at least 150 feet. We're proposing putting one in the center, which cuts that distance and gives increased access to all the commercial vendors equitably. And then if you would slide your way back, you see where this large fence is, and you have an opening there. There's also a trip hazard here we've identified that Mark's going to eliminate as well.
I will just comment, having worked down there for many years, that sometimes it's better not to have a lot of people walking on the boardwalk right next to the water, because it is a hazard when they're walking that close to the edge of the dock, and we don't really have a great railing system. And so having the entrances at either end would often serve the purpose of keeping people off of walking where they didn't need to be walking unless they were directly getting on a boat. Now, however, I know we're going to have more commercial operators there, but it's just something to keep in mind, and that we didn't always want a lot of customers walking on that side without the, you can definitely fall into the water on the other side, up from the dock onto the water. And so when people are not, when they're on vacation and they're not really paying attention to what they're doing, they don't often think about that, and they get very close to the edge. You have to remind them constantly, please don't get close to the edge. So it was sort of a crowd control to have the entrances on both ends.
So we'll ask F3 to opine.
Just one thing to mention, the way that this is configured currently, we have benches and dock boxes that are up against the fence. What's going to be installed with a gangway down and a floating dock would give us the capacity between those gangways to maybe put those dock boxes along that side, which would then keep us, we've got your fence here, the dock box is here, your pathway down is here, then it gives us.
It would create a barrier between the dock and the water, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, so
that
I
would be
think
great.
I think there's a way for us to configure it so we can keep the storage. I would like us to have newer dock boxes because some of them are a little ratty, but we'll get there. But yes, that's a way for us to, just by moving them from where they are, to provide that barrier. Easy to do, doesn't cost any money.
And we don't have a preference. I'm going to ask F3, do you want a singular opening on the west and the east end? Do you want one in the center? We'll construct whatever you want constructed. We're just here to assist.
And I'm just giving feedback. You don't have to decide right now. I just wanted to give you that, and maybe things have changed.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying because I'm concerned about the flow there as well. I don't know if the middle and the west end will give us more opportunity for people to be there or not. But I do see the benefit of having, if I'm coming into the middle and I'm, just going to the few vendors that are here, the few that are here, and then Lookout is going to have the biggest crowds. And then, obviously, Perry's operation has some pretty large crowds as well. I think it splits them. So I don't know that we'll see the full traffic happening, but again, you've been there, you know best for the years that you've been there. But as I looked at it, we had the easiest opportunity to make it ADA compliant in the middle, but that's just why we looked at that.
I like the wooden much better than the metal. But when you were quoting the potential cost of it, I didn't hear the wooden one because you were talking about option 1 and 2.
Which wooden one? With the
One
top rail?
Yes. Especially.
I think that was
For
option
me.
3, and that was around, that'd be option 4, probably around $4,000 for the all wood.
Least expensive option up front.
Right.
And if this is a 2-rail system with a wooden top rail, again, that would be the least expensive choice.
Yeah, unfortunately, almost every historic community has maintenance issues because there's always wooden everything, wooden siding, wooden paneling, but it gives the aesthetic of a historic community, so.
Okay. All right.
Are we looking to just make a recommendation because it's going in front of the HPC, right?
That would be correct. So what would you like to recommend to go? I'm assuming this is option 4, correct? Just to be,
I believe that was option 3, and the
3.
one
Okay.
right there is option 4.
All right, so 4 is no cap, no railing on top. 3 has a railing on top.
Yeah, the historical ones have the cap.
Okay.
And just to say either way, the boxes for the garden club will have to be modified anyway, because they won't fit, but we'll take care of that as well.
So we need to go ahead and,
And babies.
true point, who said that? Those are
So-
facts.
Just because of that, we want to point out that some of the initial comments of potential leading out HPC was to slant the wood to avoid the drink. So just so you know, there's a split decision. So if you choose to look at, this would be option 3, that would be around the $5,000 mark with the additional cap, we can get it under there. We can adjust it, we can make it 150-foot straight, we can put an opening at one end or the other. This makes it a much easier run because you can get these segment materials to be more suitable to our lineal distances. So if it's option 3, it'd be natural wood is our recommendation, and that we would carry that to the HPC April 7th or 8th.
When you say natural wood, are you referring to base also is treated?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good question.
3 is good.
Okay. So we've got a consensus. We don't necessarily need a vote on that one.
Probably go ahead and take a vote.
Take a vote? All righty. So it looks like, yes, sir.
Would you address the post caps or chamfer tops or flat tops on the vertical uprights as well, please?
Okay, sure. So we've got a couple of things for the board to consider, and I'll take a motion whenever you're ready. We're looking at option 3. Also, staff would like to know whether you would like to have caps on the post or not. No lighting post.
Or you just want to,
I mean, the historical boardwalk did not have the post sticking out.
So it was flat all the way across.
Okay.
But I would be curious to see what HPC has to
Yeah,
say
I was gonna
about
say
that. I
the
mean, I
same
would
thing.
love to, I want to hear the recommendation on that.
All righty, so we're going to advance something for HPC to take a look at. Option 3 is the one that we're looking. Or what is the pleasure of the board? I need a motion.
Make a motion that go with option 3 here. What are the recommendation for APC in terms of the cap?
Let them make the decision as to whether a cap's appropriate or not. All right, so we've got a motion on the floor. Any questions about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark, for
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
And congratulations on your new fence. So we're going to move on to the live oak trees. It's located at 123 through 127 Front Street. And we've got Mr. Zapp here to present upon that.
Thank you all. I have printed for you a new 11 by 17 map. It's placed in front of your workstation. Mr. Garner has a copy of the map as well, so does Mr. Airy, Grady, and we can work through the logistics of this. This is a conversation that was precipitated specifically by the residents of 125 Front Street. On this map, on the drawing that you see on the screen, Gordon and Beverly Smith had sent communication prior to Town Manager Todd Clark. That got transferred to Charlie Burgess while he was interim. And then it was brought to my attention on or around May 12th of 2025 by the Smiths that they were requesting that all 4 trees, which are live oak trees, indicated by numerals 1, 2, 3, and 4, in the vicinity nearest at their home, be removed and repurposed or replanted elsewhere. This conversation was first breached by the board in June at the workshop meeting, if I'm not mistaken, June 23rd, 2025. What we know, what we believe to be fact, and I think we have members of the previous tremendous volunteers in the audience, so if I do speak out of turn, would you please help correct me? The property owner at 127, which is the home adjacent or on the corner of both Front and Moore, that property owner underwent a larger renovation some 8 or 9 years ago. I actually have a copy of the drawing that they provided that came through the planning office, went through HPC for approval, and this drawing, which was approved and deemed with a certificate of appropriateness, showed planting of a single tree in front of the parcel at 127. The planting of that single tree by this drawing was in the vicinity where the numeral number 3 or tree number 3 currently sits. The rules and guidelines at that time were of the current LDO, which remain the same today. The guidelines for tree placement require that a tree should be 35 foot from an intersection. So in this particular case, tree number 3 would need to be 35 feet from the intersection or back of curb where Moore and Front Street intersect. The LDO currently and in the past, at the time of these plantings, goes on to indicate that the two trees from center to center should be 50 feet apart. Historic data pulls that the property owner of 127 did deviate from their approved plan and in fact shows multiple trees on the side street. There was a reduction in the number of trees planted on the side street, and there were 2 trees planted in front of 127, which are now indicated by numerals 3 and 4. There was also the placement of stakes, which I understand were placed where tree number 1 and tree number 2 are, and that the town with its subcontractor then went out and placed 2 more trees. So the town has planted trees 1 and 2. Now I'm going to pause and look at my good friend in the audience. Does that meet your recollection, Vic?
I would actually have to go back and look at the paperwork. I'm sure we did not plant all 4 of those. I don't know if we planted 1 and 2.
Okay.
And I would also add, though, that in the LDO, the standard is, I think, 35 feet from a corner and 50 feet apart. And 35, the LDO standard is a minimum of 35 feet from a corner and 50 feet apart. But that's not a minimum of 50 feet apart. You certainly could plant trees 20 feet apart, according to the LDO. And in fact, the planning board has requested trees closer than 50 feet. So just a technical point.
So I'm quoting our attorneys on the interpretation of those placements, and so thank you for that clarification. What we currently have is this drawing has gone through legal and has had review. Staff went out, both Mark went out and measured, and Vic to help, and I wasn't trying to ever put you on the spot. I know you've helped with a lot of trees with the Tremendous Tree Volunteer Program, but Mark's notes indicated that the volunteers helped place 1 and 2, and that the town staff with our sub put those trees in. So we know those to be factual pieces. The distances that are indicated in red show that tree number 4 is 17 feet from the right-of-way edge to Moore, which would thus put that tree in violation of the LDO. Technically, tree number 3 is only 32 feet to the center of the tree, and one of the purposes or one of the rationales why we believe that to be the case is due west of tree number 3 in the ground is a water meter in the spacing of the right-of-way. So we believe that the landscaper and homeowner moved that tree 2 to 3 foot east to make sure it was not in conflict with the water meter box. Then tree number 2 is 32 feet from tree number 3. And then an additional 19 feet you see where tree number 1 is. So with the interpretation of our town attorney, our planning director, and our town staff, it appears that tree number 4 is in violation of our LDO and could theoretically be removed from its current spot and repurposed elsewhere. There's also a liberal interpretation that 32 feet and some change is very, very close to 35 feet, and the purpose and intent of the HPC was for tree number 3 to be planted in that tree's vicinity, and it would be detrimental to tree 3 to spade the tree and physically move it 22 or 24 inches due west. That would not be a good move for the tree. So regardless, staff would recommend that tree number 3 should stay in its position. It's healthy, and it is exactly where the HPC identified the parcel owners of 127 to plant it. Now, I want to be clear that the parcel owners at 123 and 125 both agree, they're in unison and in writing to our team, that they believe all 4 trees should be removed from this site. The parcel owner at 127 are equitably passionate that their trees should remain. So you have the two owners at 123 and 125 would like to see all 4 trees moved. The two owners at 127 would like to see their 2 trees stay, and they also believe that the 2 trees numerated 1 and 2 are also beautiful and healthy and well-maintained. But really, the dog in the fight for 127 is they would like to see their trees in front of their homes stay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Cliff Fleet has put into writing to us that he is professionally and gainfully employed, if I'm not mistaken, in Colonial Williamsburg, where part of his job is to oversee things just like this, and believes that the trees, in his opinion in writing, are not historically relevant to his parcel and/or the parcel of 121, 123, and 125 Front Street. That is something he's put in writing to my team. With all that being said, we would ask the board to help us identify if you want to take any action at all. If you would like to take action, what tree and/or trees would you like to have relocated? And we would want to let you know that Mark went out and secured pricing. We had potentially these 4 trees and 1 other tree. So Mark has received a price from a professional team to spade and move these trees at a cost of approximately $3,500 for the whole 5 units. Now, want to be clear that you can't divide that $3,500 by 5. It's not a straight line. There's a 5th tree that Mark needed moved somewhere else that was in conflict. I'm just giving you pricing. I promise you this, Matt Zapp is not starting a chainsaw or moving a tree in Beaufort without express written permission from everybody that he reports to, because this is so important. But the quote was for 5 trees at $3,500. But there's mobilization, so it's not a direct correlation. If you move 1 tree, it's $700. If you move 2, I want to be clear about that. There's a minimal cost of a few $1,000s to move trees of this size and caliber. Caliper with a P, not caliber with a B. So there's trees 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you were to ask me in a 1-3-1 problem-solving scenario, as the manager, I believe that we could justifiably leave tree number 3 after consulting with our attorney because it was approved by HPC and it's trying to meet the intent of that 35-foot rule. But it's very difficult to defend the placement of tree 4, and it theoretically could be moved. If you determine that you move tree 3, then if the 50-foot rule is as we interpret the 50-foot rule, then tree 2 couldn't stay, but you could leave tree 1. Because if they're supposed to be 50 feet apart, tree 1 to tree 3 meets the 50-foot minimum requirement.
Matt, could you clarify, though, what Vic just said, that it's not actually a minimum, that you can have trees closer,
I would ask the
planted
attorney
closer
and I would
together?
ask the planning director, because that's the advisement that we do.
I think that's an important clarification.
I looked at the ordinance while the discussion was going on, and I'll quote from the ordinance. The spacing of street trees will be in accordance with the 3 species size listed below and no closer together than the following. Large trees, 50 foot, so no closer together.
Is a live oak tree always a large tree?
I believe that's correct.
But
Sometimes
I
they're-
went and took a look at those trees today. I mean, what's the definition of large? Because they're not large. Not by live oak standards, they're not large. They have been well maintained for them not to really expand out and be a promosity of on that street.
Yeah, I think the definition is based on the tree is fully grown, not while it's growing or when it's planted, but its anticipated size when fully grown.
Because across,
But-
I have to address this, because across the street is a fully engrossed live oak that will have a span of almost 50 foot of its branches. And if you zoom in on that, we can see it. That's part of what Mr. Fleet and Mr. Smith are indicating is if these trees reach full capacity, they'll grow into their home and they're gonna grow into each other. So they're working hard to maintain the size and scope of those trees. And they have been, all property owners here are wonderful people. They just have a different philosophy, but they're all equitably maintaining the units directly in front of their house. And a large species tree talks about the future overall growth and impact both of the stalk and root system, and then the overall canopy of the tree itself. And our plan here is nodding his head.
So if we maintain them though, as they presently are, and they're being maintained, I'm not even sure who's doing the cutting and trimming of those trees. They're very decorative from now I've heard, rumor that it's blocking the view of the waterfront, and I don't know one way, one thing or another, but our UDO state is basically when planting a tree, is that new development? Is that rule in terms of new development?
It's not couched in the phrase of new development, it's the planting of trees, period.
Period.
Yes, sir.
So these are also guidelines for our Tree City USA when we're trying to be a Tree City community. And so if you're planting a large style tree, you want to give it full birth growth, these trees by definition are required to be 50 feet apart. And they're not, obviously they're not. So that's what's getting into that conversation.
All right.
If I remember correctly, during the UDO process over the past year, there was a consultant with White and Smith who did say that yes, live oak trees can grow to be very large, but actually oftentimes they don't grow to be very large, like in Pine Knoll Shores, and you actually have a grove of live oak trees, and it's common for them. They actually like to be small as well. So I'm not a tree expert or a tree biologist, but I don't know if it's true that live oak trees always grow to be very large trees, and that's something that we reviewed in the UDO process.
Hey, Mark, can the machinery to remove the tree be able to gravel enough of that tree in terms of getting down to the root ball? Because I did speak with some, I don't know if they would be considered expert, but they did indicate to me that if not enough of that root ball is dug up, the tree is going to die.
Yes, sir, this is little nursery green.
Come on up.
The quote that I received was from Little Nursery of Greenville, I believe, is the name of the company. We met out here on a Saturday, and he said that he could take care of the trees. So I'm basing that on his professional judgment. He does this for a living, and he's actually one of the only ones that I can find within probably a 50 to 100 mile radius of us.
So he physically came in, he took a look at the trees?
Yes, sir.
And so he's saying that he can get his machinery up under there, get enough of that root ball, pull that tree up so that we can relocate it somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Cooper, I can tell you that in my past cities, we've moved larger trees in to make what we would consider to be instantaneous impact into a central park. You can do it, but you're very accurate. I want to share this with you, that the larger the caliper of the tree gets, the less likely it is to survive the transplant. And it requires it requires continuous watering, and it'll have to be staked, and you'll have to adjust and work with it. They can be moved, but there's always risk to that.
Right. Well, I'm in favor in terms of if number 4 that we're saying is not in compliance with our UDO, but 1, 2, and 3, I see no need. If they're healthy trees, so I would be in favor of leaving them where they are.
2 would not, as I understood it, 2 would not be in
Yeah, 2 is
compliance.
not in compliant either.
2 is not in compliance?
Correct.
So 2 out of the trees are not in compliance.
Oh, because of the 50-foot rule?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I speak, Mayor?
Yes, please.
And Aaron, to be clear,
So-
number 3, you believe the town could legally defend that tree would be in compliance?
Yes, sir. I hate to use the term substantial compliance, but under the circumstances, with the possible interference with the utilities when it was originally installed, I think you can defend that. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gilligan?
So I think, if we talk about taking some action on these, that we should probably do it at a regular commissioners meeting, because a lot of people are passionate about trees. That's the first thing I want to say. The second is, if we take an action to move 1 or more of these trees, who else is going to come to us and want trees moved? I don't want to open up a door where we are losing trees, because not 100% transplant. They require a lot of attention. I feel like we'll be flushing some money down the toilet here, to be quite honest. So I'm concerned about other people going out with measuring tapes around town and saying, well, I want this one moved. I think it could get complicated, and I think we've made some decisions in the past that have compromised our canopy, and we're trying to get it back, and I just don't think it's a great idea. But if we do take some kind of action about moving them, then I think it should be done in a regular meeting.
So is this something that we could, table for further discussion as more information and expertise and looking into in terms of removing them, and just table it for another time?
I believe this is really designed to provide you with some kind of information, more so than request. If you're not prepared to take any action today, you don't have to.
I'm not.
But this topic does need to be brought up. I mean, we've had this brought up to us before. There's got to be some considerations. Going to have homeowners that are going to want to have an answer. So I believe this is what we're trying to accomplish here, is to have this conversation again, and at some point in time, a decision of this board will have to be made as to what direction you need to go into. You've been given some legal advice, a very good narrative. Matt did a great job in explaining everything. So we could definitely put this on to our next agenda moving
Yeah,
forward in April.
I think I would agree with Commissioner Cooper. I would make a motion to table this for a regular board meeting. A future regular board meeting.
Another comment.
Discussion on the motion before we take a vote, just two additional small items that perhaps would help us in making a decision. Obviously, we put in place the distance for tree number 4, how far that should be from the intersection. So what downside there is to leaving 4 in place would help me in hearing that. I don't know who provides that type of information, but it certainly would help me to hear that. There was also some information in our package about potential impacts on the Yopons that are beside the, right just in front of those two townhomes. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if it would help to have someone maybe independent, like Cooperative Extension, to take a look at it and to give us some advice on that, but it would help to hear a little bit more about that as well.
Okay. So it says here too, upon the direction of this board, does this need to go back in front of the HPC?
No, ma'am. The HPC, their approval is 8, now almost 9 years old.
Okay.
The problem is, and this isn't to be detrimental to any of us on staff, but we didn't address this concern when they were immediately planted. So the property owners at 127 said, well, why is this a problem now? The property owners at 125 first communicated to us through an attorney. I want you to be aware of that. And then 125 garnered the support of 123. And so I think, Commissioner Matthews, you asked why is tree 4 and potentially a conflict in the LDO? It's a line of sight issue. And so when you are breached at the stop and you are facing southbound on Moore and you look east and you look west to make your movement forward, that's why trees are separated back from an intersection at 35 feet.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just to make a comment, I mean, obviously, the community and the board is sensitive to the trees, and we don't want to see the loss of the canopy in the community. But I do think we have to be sensitive to the fact that we do have a land development ordinance in place. And that land development ordinance that's in place is important to homeowners and property owners, so that when anything were to happen in the community that maybe adversely affects them, they do have a book or rule of law that they can go by and that we've agreed upon. And that's that contract with that person in the community, that we will abide by that. And I think we really need to be sensitive to that because, we have homeowners that may have cut trees down on their properties. You may not like that, but there are homeowners who do that to build homes and so forth in our community. But when you have something like this too, which is in the public right of way, I think we have to be sensitive that our document needs to be the rule of law and we need to follow that. And as members of the board, that's what we're elected to do and to uphold. So.
And can I say, I agree with Commissioner LaPiccolo. It is important that we have these ordinances. I do want to note that we are in the process of updating our UDO, which includes our LDO and our tree ordinances. So we do also recognize that some of the things that we've done in the past, while well-intentioned, we're working on updating to better suit what our community needs now. So, hopefully this process will help us as we're looking forward. What do we need in our community? How do we write those ordinances so we maybe avoid this in the future and have what's best for the community?
All right, so it seems like the board really needs to have a little bit more time to think and consider this. The staff has laid out the options very well. If you wish to go ahead and advance this to your April 7th meeting, I believe it is? 13th, oh, don't want to meet any earlier, April 13th Board of Commissioners meeting.
Can we set it back a little further? I mean, I'd like to really get a good information, expertise, and et cetera. So if we could push it to maybe May, or
Because that's only 2 weeks away.
What,
April
May?
meeting. No, the April meeting.
April's about 3 weeks away, but May would give us opportunity to really deep dive into this as we're about to, whatever decision we come about for those 4 trees.
I agree.
Okay, you've got 2 board members that would like to push it out to May. What is that board meeting?
The 11th.
The 11th. Gonna have to make a decision at some point in time.
I like to make a motion that we table this to our May 11th board meeting.
Okay, got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Now, Commissioner Cooper, you want to make a comment?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't get to see it, and when I opened up my email, I see where our town manager sent us some pictures, and I want the town to be aware that the Gazette Hotel, you're gonna see yellow tape around it. It's not for demolition. It's for that safety factor that we spoke on in terms of whether or not, how safe that underpass is for that hotel. But yellow tape is up for now, and I'm hoping that, is there future potential there, town manager, to maybe board it up versus the yellow tape?
So Mark, do you want to make your way back up? So based on the ask of the board, the planning department went out and inspected the overpass at 400 Pollock, identified that there are potential critical issues and that it's a potential for an unsafe condition. When that report was provided to us on Friday, we kicked it to Public Works, and today, prior to today's 4 o'clock board meeting, Mark went out and placed a sidewalk closed sign and some yellow cautionary tape. So if there is a desire of the board to do a more permanent or a more substantial style of blockade, we can ask Mark to do that. Mark, were you planning on doing that, and this is temporary?
We have 2x6s in place, and we have 2 boards affixed to the wall, and the other 2 boards are to the column, and the caution tape is just for visuals to bring it to your attention.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate it. We know that those pictures, we were working on those real time, so we sent that over real time. And we wanted to make sure you knew before the 4 o'clock meeting that it was addressed and handled as requested.
And thank you for doing that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
That, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Now, we've got staff comments.
Go test it out with Mike.
All right. Matt, you want to take over staff comments?
Yes, ma'am. So again, thank you to the team for all that we're doing and trying to keep all the projects moving. And I do have the pleasure of giving you some positive updates. And so I thank the board for your time that you've invested to discuss these trees on Front Street. And I want you to know that if it was a simple process, I would gladly make that decision. And it's a difficult one, so thank you for taking the time. And a Hail Mary of Please don't punish the messenger. So, with that being said, good news coming. We do have a lot of important things that are positive, and one of those are the Turner Street timeline and the highlights for Turner Street. So, in preparation for today's meeting, I communicated with our contact at TA Loving Company. Concrete is scheduled to be poured this week along Turner Street. That includes both the curbing that needed to be replaced and the raised elevated 2 pedestrian walkways. And that is to be scheduled between today and Friday, weather permitting. That will allow asphalt to begin the week of the 30th of March through Friday, the 3rd of April. That will come in 2 lifts. That's by definition of how they would have to pour that asphalt by lift. There is a potential that that street could be open as early as April 6th to through traffic, but it will require the Turner and Front Street intersection and the Turner and Ann Street intersection to be closed off temporarily to allow the phasing and improvements of those intersections to be milled and paved. So the good news is we remain on target. We closed on March the 10th, anticipating a full reopening as late as April 10th, and we should still be within that 4-week window. We know that the Beaufort Wine and Food Festival is scheduled for the week thereafter, so our goal is still to be open and available for that large festival. Want to let everyone know that the purpose and reason that Turner Street was closed for so long was the removal of the entire pre-existing roadway, a brand-new installation of base at roughly 11 inches of stone that is currently being compacted, and then 2.5 inches of overall asphalt, which would be edge to edge to that whole section, the entire 100 block of Turner. The next is, we were thinking about doing a happy dance last week as the fuel station project remains both on target, on budget, and theoretically ahead of schedule. And so I'd like to publicly go out on a limb here and thank our team from Oaks Grading, our other local partners at Jim Davis, our other local partners at Thomas Simpson Construction. If you were out there today, the concrete is already poured for the delivery lane, the new sidewalk is installed, the brick pavers have been reinstalled, and the concrete cap to the fuel tank is already in position. Thomas Simpson's team was finishing up civil work today. They have removed the portions of the project where the construction was occurring in the parking lot. They have prepped that stone, and if I'm not mistaken, they were probably compacting it while we've been in this space. So asphalt is theoretically scheduled for the remainder of this week, so a lot of great progress there. Thank you to everyone that has helped lay that foundation, put together a definitive plan, and we have tried to execute the plan, so thank you to BWOOF for that and all those that worked on this process. It's important that we take time to take a victory lap every now and then, and I want to thank this board for that. There's been a tremendous amount of work and to try to get us to that point. Now, obviously, the price of diesel fuel is going to have an impact, but we want to let you know that we have the fuel carts, all the materials are on order, and the shipment is being tracked. Those meters may be here as early as Tuesday or Wednesday. The first cart would be thus assembled, tested, and make sure that replication of the second, third, and fourth cart is appropriately done. There's also the importance of the pressurized testing of the system, and Lori conveyed to us through her communication to the team that pressure testing is underway, and if that's the case, that DDOC, D as in dog, would have potential for fixed asset fueling as early as next week. And so we're trying to remain ahead of schedule. Again, our targeted goal is April 1st, and that is something that we should all just take a beat and say thank you to everybody from F3, this team. There's been a little bit of work internally, so we've tried to put our part in there too, but from CAMA permitting, the assistance of Kyle to get those permits rolling, our fire inspector, so thank you to the Beaufort Fire Department and all the other inspections that occurred to make that happen. It was more of an orchestra-style process than just a one person with a banjo, so thank you to everyone. I'll answer any other questions that the board may have about either of these projects or anything else that we currently have active in the field.
I just want to say thank you, Matt. That is very exciting. Would you be able to give us a heads up before the first gallon is pumped to the docks so we can see
So
it?
I'm already receiving text messages for the people that want to be the first to get a new gallon of that fuel. And so I will ask Lori, since she's frontline, that if you will help keep me abreast of the first gallon pumped, then we will try to convey that to you.
That would be wonderful. You could probably sell that first gallon for a lot of money, I'm just saying.
Yes. Would you like to be the one pumping it?
Absolutely.
We've got a pumper here for you.
Photo opportunity, but
Photo
it is a big day for us. There's a lot of good news.
Yeah.
The final inspection has been done or has not been done?
The UST inspection didn't need to occur in person, and that was
Okay.
courtesy of David Johnson at Oak, so we are finally inspected and checked off.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Well, we have a lot to be grateful for, and it didn't come by accident. It came by a community coming together and doing what they needed to do in order to better ourselves. Our BWOLF committee being one of them. I want to thank all those members for getting us to where we are to this day. Leadership of the BWOLF committee was also very instrumental. I want to thank Commissioner Gillikin and Commissioner Spiegler for spearheading that and taking that time. I know that it was a lot of energy being put into this committee, and here we are. It's an amazing thing to see. And thank you for everyone who has put their hands on this and blessed this project. And if there's any further questions, please ask them now. If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
$20 a gallon. We did.